The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the December 21st meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. The first item on the agenda today is Windjammer Fun Center LLC has applied for a variance for signage on a property located at 3846 South Danville Bypass, Danville, Kentucky. The property is zoned highway commercial HC. Steve?
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all
Thank you.
pardon my voice today. It's only about half here.
Like before, you guys have the staff reports in your packet for all three cases. Got several folks in the audience, so
Swap these.
the mic's here. So the staff report's up on the screen. You guys aren't going to have to probably turn around. Everything's in your packet, so I'll sort of play off the page numbers, but for the folks in the crowd, I'll reference a lot of things on the screen. This first case, as you heard, we had application filed December 28th, 2017. The applicant is Windjammer Fun Center LLC. They're also the property owner. The location is 3846 South Danville Bypass. It is zoned highway commercial. And I'm jumping to page 2. So there's a couple maps in your packet that show the location. The top one's a PVA, or our zoning map, and the one below is a PVA parcel map. Outlined in red is the actual parcel. It's approximately 2 acres, and again, you heard that the applicants are applying for a wall sign for one of the sides of the building. Some interesting particulars to this application I'll walk you through. And I'm actually going to go back a page to page 1. And you guys got good drawings that didn't end up on the PowerPoint of the building. And the picture of the property, basically what happened was the property owner decided to paint the building, renovate the facility, give it a different look. And when the applicant came in, well, his property manager or the skate center manager came in to talk to us about signage, said they were going to paint the building, kind of do a mural of some kind on the all the way around. The question was, can we do some signage? And what we communicated to that lady was, you can do signage, you can paint a sign on the building, but that would be a sign, and you only get 2 wall signs. So what's on the building that's on that little picture, it's hard to see, but there was already a marquee style sign at the corner of that building that was there before they painted. And you've got one of those pictures in your packet. So we explained that's already one of those 2 wall signs that you get. So you get another wall sign. So it was talked about, well, we're going to paint the building, we're going to put words on the building facade, and we said we're going to have to pick one of those facades for that second sign because you only get 2 wall signs and, you know, 1 freestanding sign and whatnot. So basically, the building got painted, and a second wall sign appeared on the quality inside. And in talking with the property owner and the manager, it was just bad communication, probably on our part, a little bit of that, because I think what happened was we explained you could have 2 wall signs. One of those was already up, so you only get 1 more. The painter came to town, painted the building, painted on the 2 sides. We ended up, we have 3 wall signs on the building. And you guys got good exhibits in front of you, kind of before and afters that show that. And as you know, on page 3 of your staff report, the zoning ordinance talks about signage. Article 13.15.3, again, we've talked about this a month or 2 ago, that in the highway commercial, you get basically 2 wall signs. They can't go over 5% of that facade. We count painted signs. Signs would be mounted. And basically what happened was that other wall sign got painted on, which would be the left side of that picture on that facade that's really out of the view. So in talking with the applicant, we said, well, there's 2 options. You either take the sign down, it was already painted, and they had a painter come from out of state, paint this building, or you could ask for a variance for the 3rd sign. So what kind of evolved with this case was, you can get it legal, or you can take it down. And the applicant asked, well, let me try to get a variance. At the same time, we noticed, and it's hard to see again in this picture, but there were 2 freestanding signs already out on the property. So our kind of approach to this was, if you're going to ask for the variance, we'd like to see the whole site come in compliance. So you need a variance for the 3rd wall sign, and we need to talk about those 2 freestanding signs, because really, under the current rules, you only get 1. So all that's in your staff report, how we do variances, how we add conditions, our staff items of concern. And again, just to be as straightforward as we can here, some of this falls back on us, because again, communicating to a staff member who then called the owner, who then called the painter, It just sort of got kind of mixed up on how many wall signs. So we looked up, and there was the other word that said Windjammer on that far side. Now, interesting enough, the pictures that you've got at your seat that show the before and after, it's interesting to us, you can hardly see the sign that's on the far side unless you're staying in the Quality Inn. We'll walk out of the park. I don't see it from the road, but that is actually the third sign. So the owner has indicated he'd like to keep it up there because it's already painted. You don't want to have to bring the painter back. So our option was, well, then you can come to the Board of Adjustments and ask for a variance for that third sign. And as you've heard me say in the prior month or two, not unusual to have multiple wall signs, and our ordinance is fairly strict on this 2, and we've already had businesses come forward and say, we want a third, or we need it here, there, whatever. We allow 2. And that third one is incidental from the view shed especially, but even the functionality of the building. We've got buildings in town with 3, we've got some with 2, we've got some that have asked for more. So this is the process. We allow 2, and if you want the third one, you gotta come ask for it. It's not normally the case the sign goes up first, and then you all hear it. But the ordinance is pretty clear how you guys look at variances, and you all have to decide if this was a willful violation of the zoning ordinance or a circumvention of the zoning ordinance. If it was an honest mistake or bad communication, I see this no different than the other ones where they're asking for a third sign, and you all got to decide if it's appropriate or not, if it blends, whatever. But in our opinion, it wasn't willful because we just sort of botched the communication on the signage. It's confusing. And I know we said 2 because there was actually applications filed. They came in and paid for one of the signs, and they tried to pay for 2, and we said, we can't do 2, you've already got 1, we can only take 1. So we actually processed 1 application. When the other sign got painted, they came in and tried to get another permit to correct their mistake. And we said, we can't take the permit because you can't technically have that third sign. So we all were on the same page at that point that, whoops, we got 3 now, and it's simply because the building was painted. And you see all the renderings in your packet that the applicant provided, the before and after. So the word Windjammer Fun Center is on 2 of those facades, as well as that bigger marquee sign, which is really what you really see from the road. And that one didn't change. The building got painted on the other sides. So that's the case, kind of in the summary form. I'm glad to answer any questions. And I think the applicant's here somewhere. They're back there. And yes.
So am I right that what makes it a sign is the words? So if we disallowed it, it would just mean more of the neon green and less of the word?
Yeah,
Or
when you-
not the third word?
The letters, the way we measure wall signs, if it's actually in a can or a box and you put it on the wall, we measure the sign. If it's just letters painted on the wall, we just sort of outline and shape the letters, and we say that's the sign face. But because it says Windjammer, that's a sign. So their option would be to paint over it, blend it with the artistic kind of look of the building, but they'd like to keep it up. Again, a painter came from out of state to do this, and their option was just to come into compliance with the 2, pick one of the 3 and get rid of it, or ask for a variance to go from 2 to 3. So that's the application today, is to go from 2 signs to 3. And those are the facts on how we got to this point. Applicant's been great to work with, because again, I think some of this fell on us, just communicating our sign rules. They're different each zoning district, and they already had signs on the property. They already had those 2 freestanding signs too, by the way. So our goal here is let's clean it all up in one swoop if the board sees fit, and that would be going to the 3 wall signs, but maybe getting rid of one of those freestanding signs.
Which one of those signs are they opting?
I don't think we ever fine-tuned that. I think we were just talked about it in concept, that it made sense that we'd bring one into compliance. Interesting enough, as you drive down the road, the most effective sign is actually their marquee sign that's on the corner of that building. It's very visible, attractive. The other ones are there. I'm not sure what purpose they serve, but I don't own the property, and I know how people feel about their signs when you're in a commercial business, and they're valuable. That would be their decision. They're both non-conforming signs due to the location to the road and the fact that there's 2 on one piece of property, but they've been there. So
Well, the one is lower than the other.
one is smaller.
There at the entrance is low, it's redundant, nobody sees it even.
It's kind of, again, they didn't decide which one they'd be willing to sort of, and we never fine-tuned it. They were willing, we just talked about in general that we might get one of the signs removed. Obviously, the easier one to do would be the one on the left. Seems to be smaller, probably not as visible. It's mounted a little easier to probably remove or relocate or do something with. But again, that's as far as we got with the property owner. The owner's from out of the, not out of the state, but he's located in a different part of the state of Kentucky, so it's been tough to actually get on site and talk about some of those things the last week or so.
Any other questions for Steve?
Yeah, can we clarify the removal of the freestanding sign?
Yeah, that'd be the property owner.
Can we stipulate that?
I think you guys, again, as the ordinance says here, you guys are allowed to impose any or any conditions you choose. The property owner may want to get up here and explain to you kind of how he feels about that and what he prefers, but at the end of the day, you guys approve variances with conditions if you see fit.
Okay, we probably want to talk with the property owner if he would come up. Bruce, did you have something that you needed to add?
There, I guess I guess I don't want to confuse things until the applicant's through.
Okay.
Maybe I can comment after
All right.
the applicant's through.
Okay.
Okay.
State your name, please,
Jeremy Collett.
and raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. As far as the sign on the left side of my building, I know I just heard the reference, well, it's just Quality Inn next door. Well, in this picture here, there's 14 rooms of Quality Inn, which houses families that comes into Danville to stay overnight. And as far as a kid looking out the side of that room, they're not gonna see the front of my building. They won't, that's the only sign, and anybody's welcome to go out to look. That's the only sign they're gonna see, even to know what that building is. Yeah, it's a big green and purple building, but it does say Windjammer Fun Center right there. So that is my reasoning for the sign on that side. You know, I'm trying to gain business from those 14 people that rents those rooms every night. So that is my purpose for that. As far as the sign at the road, the small sign, I do have on the back side of that sign as my customers leaves, it's a little "Be safe, thank you, Windjammer Fun Center." So, you know, I do have that with that little sign, but, you know, and unfortunately, yes, there was some miscommunication. As I talked to Steve's office yesterday, there was even some email communication that was wrong. I got told this meeting today was the 24th, and luckily she called me yesterday, or else I wouldn't have been here today to let her know. And then the prior meeting was also, she said it was a December 1st meeting, and so there has been a lot of miscommunication between us and the office. I live in London. Unfortunately, yeah, I have talked to Steve on the phone, and he has been great to work with. And there was, in the beginning, even before I even painted my building the bright colors, I contacted his office to say, hey, this is what we're wanting to do. Is there a problem with the colors or anything like that? So, and unfortunately, we did the painting on the weekend, so my painter did it on Friday night. He has to project the things on the side of the building. As soon as my manager come in Saturday morning, she said, hey, we got a problem. I talked to her, and we was under the impression in the beginning that we had the choice. We could do both sides or one side. So whenever we first, I said, we'll just do the right side. Well, then after that happened, I said, hey, let's go Monday morning, and that's what we did. We went Monday morning and just pled forgiveness. Hey, we're sorry. This happened. My painter had already done it. I hated to, you know, I was paying the guy, and I hated to say, hey, wipe it off, put it back, do something different. So that's why I'm here today, to, you know, just asking for forgiveness and a variance. So,
Are you stating from your statement that you would prefer to keep the low sign versus the tall?
Yeah, our question is regarding the freestanding
If
signs.
indeed you did keep the three.
right. I'll take the front one down. Is there any way that I can leave this up going out?
You want the small one then versus the tall one? If indeed that's what we decide.
I mean, we'll take the small one down.
Does the small one mark the entrance into your business?
Do what now?
Does this small one, it marks the entrance into your
Yes,
business?
yes.
Is that going to be a problem if there's something marking that entryway there?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Any questions? Bruce?
I think in the past, this body has some of the newer members may not remember this, but part of the statute, state statute talks about willful violations. And there have been several instances in the past where simply because it was done, it was considered to be willful, and the applicant had to remove whatever the violation was. There's been a recent case, in the legal world, recent would be 2016, out of Bowling Green. Steve was involved in the case. The court basically said, you know, you can't, if you don't ask the question and you come in and plead ignorance, that, you know, that can be a willful violation. Obviously, if the question was asked and they, you know, and they clearly understood the instructions, you know, I think you could find that as willful. It all just depends upon what you hear from the applicant and the circumstances of the case, whether or not you call it willful. If you call it willful, you can't, I mean, if you think it's a willful violation, then you can't grant the variance. So I guess in the past, we had followed a policy whereby if it was built, we didn't really inquire too much into the circumstances of what the violation was. It was built, too bad, that's willful. I think we've got some guidance now from the court where the courts ask us to consider the circumstances in terms of making up our minds whether or not it's a willful violation or not. But what the court's clearly saying is willful doesn't mean what in the common vernacular we think it means, malicious and, you know, underhanded. Willful can be, given other surrounding circumstances, that they didn't ask the question. Or willful certainly could be where they asked the question, they told they couldn't do it, and they went ahead and did it, which is not the case here.
Any questions?
I'm still unclear about which of the freestanding signs you suggest be removed, Mr. Collins.
Just the small.
I was suggested by the planning and zoning that this sign here, the small sign, which this is the back side of the sign here, the front sign says Windjammer Fun Center. So this one here, and this marks the entrance into my building. The taller sign is on up above the hill, but this one here is right at the road, at the actual road going into my business, the small one.
I mean, they were out of compliance already with the two road signs anyway. Is that not correct?
Those signs were there. They've been there a long time, and I guess our approach was, if we're coming in to get a variance to deal with sign issues, let's clean up the whole property at one time. That's why we left it up to this gentleman to decide which one. And I see there's a message on the back of that to sort of thank his customers and safe trip type thing. The bigger sign made more sense. It's just bigger, more value. It's got a little bit of a reader board, so there's an ability that he could probably do some stuff there. But between the two, we just left it up to him to figure that out. But that would bring the site 100% in compliance. If y'all granted the variance for the 3 wall signs and he's allowed the 1 pole sign, then it's in compliance, and he'll have 3 wall signs and 1 pole sign, whichever one.
Any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I move to approve the request for variance with the stipulation that one of the freestanding signs be removed, understanding from the applicant that it'll be the smaller entranceway sign.
So your motion is to approve based on the findings of fact, and that the smaller sign be approved, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Be removed.
Okay, be removed, yes, okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any, second, I need a second,
Oh.
yes.
Second.
Second, okay. All approved?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you.
Thank you.
The second item on the agenda The Boyle County Industrial Foundation has applied for a variance for building height on a property located on Corporate Drive, Danville. The property is zoned industrial business development. Steve?
Thank you. This is another variance request, a little bit different. Again, we had our application filing deadline was December 28, 2017. The applicant is Boyle County Industrial Foundation Incorporated. They are also the property owner. The property is actually a zero address. You got that on page 2 of your staff report. It's a great big piece of property that fronts corporate and gets out to 34. It's got a zero address. What's happened in the industrial park is they've platted properties, developed properties, the original farm's getting smaller. So this is kind of a leftover piece. It's 200-plus acres. However, there is a master plan that went out in your packet. This variance request is actually for this conceptual Lot 8, which is approximately 54 acres. Might end up being a little smaller. What the variance request is for height. Our zoning ordinance limits height to 60 feet for highway commercial and industrial business development district. So we limit height. We have an exception for some parts of the building, but in this case, it's not going to work for what the applicant needs here. The uniqueness of this application is the Boyle County Industrial Foundation is they have a client. They have a speculative client that's possibly going to look at this Lot 8. They need a height variance before they can move forward and hopefully kind of close the deal on this industrial client. So the application was for a height variance. Very nice written narrative that Mr. Lassiter submitted that's in your packet there on why they need the variance, and even a condition that if the client doesn't come, the variance would go away. But what they need is a 90-foot height variance for kind of an undetermined client, but we know it's going to be industrial use. But what our zoning ordinance says, which is a little interesting here, and that's here the provision with this variance is being asked is Article 5, 10.4, and it says the maximum height of a non-residential structure 60 feet, and the only exception is roof equipment not intended for human occupancy and which is necessary to the structure which is placed, which means things on the roof related to the structure. This variance is, again, 90 foot from the 60, but it wouldn't be on the roof of this building. We know that much, but we can't say much more. I don't know much more, and I don't think Jody can say much more than the client needs a variance for a structure that would not be on the roof of this potential building that locates there. So you can infer what that could be or not be, but clearly our ordinance only accepts things on the roof, not maybe that sits next to the building, like a cooling tower or, this would say a cell tower or something. We don't know what this is, but our ordinance says 60 feet. Anything else has to be on the roof and be related to the structure. Other zoning ordinances I've seen in the past typically don't have height requirements in industrial districts or commercial districts. Or if they do, they exempt things like chimneys and spires and church tower, whatever. Ours that's all they exempt are roof-mounted stuff that people don't occupy that are related to the structure, which pretty much means equipment, HVAC, things of that nature. Clearly, there's a need for a taller structure on this property for a potential economic development client, and I'll leave it at that. And they're asking for that variance for that exact reason. And we'll let Winfield's here too, and Jody Lassiter's here to tell you kind of where they're at. We left it pretty straightforward on this. They've asked for the variance. Again, you guys can add conditions. You can obviously ask some questions. They've submitted a nice narrative. In your packet, again, I'll get to that. There's the conceptual plan that was in your packet. This is their master plan. And again, that lot is this great big piece, but Lot 8 is just this right here. So what they're asking for is a variance for Lot 8 or a portion thereof. Again, if the client comes to Danville, Boyle County, be located in this area and they need a variance to go up to 150 feet. And again, they offered up the condition that that if the owner, again, if they don't locate, the project's called Project Eagle. So I don't know if that 150 foot is an eagle's nest up there or something, or what we're building there, but I don't know what that is. We'll let Jody figure that, tell us that. But it says if they don't come here, the variance would actually become void. So put you guys in a kind of unique situation where we can't get kind of real hard footprints of buildings because they're just unknown at this time, and this variance is needed for a client to basically say, we'll come here and we'll acquire the property and be able to build the structure we need to create jobs here for the county. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any question. Everything's in your packet there. The staff items of concern outlines their condition that they've offered up. Of course, you guys can ask for any others. And Mr. Lassiter's here. There's the concept plan. And their attorney's here if you guys have any questions for them.
Does anybody have-
Yes, sir.
Jody, you or one of you? Okay.
You got one for me or for?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The sketch implies a frontage on Lebanon Road.
Yes.
Is that an entranceway or just a
What you see in the.
fluke of the
if you look-
drawing?
If you look at that area right there, that's a street view shot, that shows that strip right in that area. Why it was platted that way, why we ended up with this parcel and this configuration was kind of how they've cut, they've been taking pieces, and there's obviously some frontage there that looks like a width that obviously if they had to get something to the road. But at this point, when you go back to their master plan and see what they're showing in their master plan, it doesn't show any roads coming out this way. It shows a lot.
But my
that-
question is, would that qualify, would that be allowed as an entrance according to our regulations?
It would if they, but right now, they don't show one platted that way, potentially. They show a lot that could be sold that obviously might have a driveway then, or come off a different road. So again, that's all conceptual. I'll let them explain what they see, but that frontage is just what's left as they've cut the property.
Wouldn't the state have to approve any driveway?
Any driveways would have to be approved by the state, but I don't think that's really the plan at this point, based on this plan, but I'll let them explain how they see that. Yes?
Second question. I've not had experience of a sundowner sort of variance. How do we
Yeah.
stipulate that and set a drop-dead date for that?
Good point. And use sundowner, I'll use the word sunset, whatever kind of clause you want to call it. Again, conditions are problematic for the planning commission staff sometimes, as you guys put conditions that have sunset. You know, you see deed restrictions and things, hey, these are in effect till the year 2029, and then they phase on out. But actual conditions on, for example, conditional use permits are easier for us because they tie into the use. Variances run with the land, so if you guys grant a variance of 10-foot setback, they run with the property. So to put a sunset clause, say, hey, we approve the variance, but it goes away at some point, we don't see those because we're dealing with building footprints and setbacks. In this case, with the height, they just offered it up to say if the client doesn't come, we'll just voluntarily remove the variance. The way that would work is if the client doesn't show up, the next client would not be able to use that same variance. They'd have to come back and ask for a different one if they had to go above 60 foot. I prefer for variances to run with the property, not sunset out like that, because again, they're trouble for us. You know, how do we know down the road? But this one would be fairly easy because the client's going to be there if they get it. If they don't, it's gone. And we would know that when the next client shows up, I guess. And we would say, hey, you can't go higher than 60 foot.
So the answer to my question is only this application and this potential client.
That's what they've said.
Would
to
it
this
pertain
client.
to? Any successive client, that would not pertain.
Well, and that's what it says. Again, problematic for us is we don't know who the client is. We don't know the name. So I'm not saying these guys would do this, but it'd be easy to say, hey, they didn't show up, or we don't never hear about it, and there's another client, and we think it's one and the same. So without us knowing the client, knowing the name, knowing the footprint, this one is tough for us because they're saying, hey, if they don't come, it's gone. How are we going to know that unless we know what client is? But they're using these names, Project Eagle and other things, so if the next one's called some other name, I'm assuming it's a different client. But they voluntarily said that. I prefer just to grant the variance, move on, and if the next client comes in, clearly, and they're different, it's not going to be as tall. But this is a very unique variance, and that is a fairly substantial height. My guess is not every client would need that kind of height. They're very rare. So,
I have a question for either Jody or for Wendell.
Yep.
Jody, you need to be sworn. Let me get you sworn in.
He can whisper answers to me.
Okay. Do you swear to affirm the statement you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes, ma'am.
State your name.
Jody Lassiter.
Okay. My question is, can you tell us anything more about what this type of structure is going to be?
It is a manufacturing facility, and the nature of the process requires multiple structures that would exceed the current variance limitation of 60 feet. And that's why our request is not to exceed 150
Is
feet.
this like a smokestack type thing, or a, I don't know what else goes up 150 feet, but.
Due to a non-disclosure agreement, I can
Okay.
only answer that it's a manufacturing facility.
Okay, I understand.
And in the event this Project Eagle does not materialize, we would just give record notice to the Board of Adjustments and to Planning and Zoning, because we have no intent to carry it forward or a reason to.
Okay.
You know if this tower is connected to the building then?
Yes, associated structure.
Do you have a guesstimate of where on this 50-some acres, if the structure's gonna be?
It will be facing Corporate Drive.
Mm-hmm. But you don't have any kind of setback or anything associated with that?
Not other than the zoning requirement of 40 feet in the front and 20 on the sides.
And I think that would probably come with the site plan when and if this actual project
Right.
comes into fruition.
This is a speculative project, so I think that we need to defer to the site plan, which you're not giving carte blanche to this project by any means, because there will be a rigorous, we're talking about a facility that will well exceed 200,000 square feet. So that will be something that's state jurisdiction, and will go through that review and approval process. And of course, there will be approval at the local level for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Is there anything that you can tell us that would allow us to evaluate the risks to the community of potential pollution, noise, eyesores, things like that?
I
Site?
believe that's germane, but I'll let you.
Well, I mean, like Mr. Lassiter was saying, we've got to keep some confidentiality about this. As far as potential pollution, I don't think we've got that data right now because it's a concept. What I can tell you about the project is it's going to be an outstanding addition to the industrial park, potentially bringing 275 jobs to the community and about $100 million in capital expenditures. So it's going to be a great addition to our already robust industrial park. But as far as actual hard data on pollution effects or eyesores, which is kind of subjective, we really don't have that in hand for this requested variance.
The issue at hand is without a variance, the community will be eliminated. That's basically the long and short.
Well-
And the decision-making process is right now, February will be the determination.
Well, since you have to have site plan approved, I don't think that would be much of a problem, because planning and zoning would have to approve the looks of the building and the structure.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
But it could be a Corning glass plant where they make Eagle glass, which releases carcinogens, arsenic, and so forth into the community.
Is that a matter for this board?
Well, I mean, is there a risk of pollution with any sort of industrial endeavor? I mean, I think the answer to that's yes. I mean, look at the industrial park right now with Donley, Caterpillar, everybody. But if that's really, I don't think that should be the board's issue today on approving this variance, is whether or not there's going to be pollution emanating from an industrial project. I think today we're just asking that the board allow this variance so that Danville's not eliminated. It's not even a sure thing that it would be coming to Danville, right? I mean, right now, it's just, we don't want Danville to be eliminated as a potential location for this project based upon this height requirement or limitation.
Is Danville on the short list, or is there a longer list than that?
I don't know if we can really say that, but we're a finalist. How many communities are?
We're on the short list among 3 states. And we're the only community that has such a limitation to building height. Those are the competitive challenges your economic development organization faces every day.
any other comments or questions?
Steve, access to Lebanon Road, would that come as part of the site plan? Or,
Yeah, there's already an encroachment approved for that access point. It's a 100-foot right-of-way between what is now the easternmost boundary line of Wilderness Trail, which is not marked here, Wilderness Trail Distillery. You probably accessed that road to park for the barbecue festival. So that's already there. It's approved. The encroachments were approved last year by the Kentucky Department of Highways. So that entrance is already there as a private access road for the industrial park.
that road that I drive by is not part of the Wilderness Trace property?
No, that is a right-of-way retained by the Industrial Foundation. Should there be a need on the
So it's just
west
being-
side of the park
So it's just being used as a courtesy by the, for the construction?
for their
purpose?
construction needs, yes. We actually advanced the input of the road
And so this
much
would be part
quicker
of
than we
a
have.
site plan?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, that answered.
I'm not sure how much of Lot 8 will be utilized. So
That's what's confusing even for us. Lot 8, right now, it says or a portion thereof.
that's conceptual.
That's conceptual, so if that client comes in and stays on the corporate side and frontage, that Lot 8 could be split into two. And it might be another project someday that's using that access point or creating a different lot, but at this point, they may just have a driveway off that future street that you see conceptual there to the north side. But I haven't seen any site plans, and they haven't given me any indication where the footprint of the building's going and where their main driveway access points would be or not be.
The focus of the project is fronting along Corporate Drive, north of the Extension Service Office up to our planned access road just to the north of that. As you'll note, Preston, that where the pond area and the slope on the topo is, in the lower part of Lot 8's a little bit of a challenge.
Too low.
That's right. But it could potentially be used as, to be environmentally good stewards. That could be used as part of a retention plan and using the natural contours.
Any other questions?
The discussion I've heard regarding a access road from Corporate Drive into the Wilderness Trace facility, is that going to follow roughly the sketch of this cul-de-sac?
That's in relation to
heard
Project
discussion
Angel or
of that.
IJW. It's not Wilderness Trace or Trail Distillery.
Yeah.
That will be accessed to immediately to the west, which is not shown here, the north-south boundary of the industrial park. West of that is the new Lot 19, just recently approved, and that is the focus of the IJW Whiskey Company project. And yes, that current cul-de-sac to the west will be extended, or at least a
extended.
portion of it will be extended to access the new distillery in the future, if that phase comes online.
Any other questions? If not, does anyone have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we deny the requested variance of a 90-foot addition to the height. We are charged with protecting the community's health and safety and welfare and the character, the essential character of the area, and we don't have enough information to assure that whatever this is will not affect any of those things. It's adjacent to a school, to the Boyle County Extension Office, where children go for 4-H events, to the Wilderness Trail Distillery. The school I'm referring to is the Kentucky Community Technical College. A major new tourism development, this Wilderness Trail Distillery, part of the Bourbon Trail, is also adjacent. And I think that it could, from what we know, affect the essential character of that vicinity. It could affect, if it's a smokestack for a glass factory, it could affect health, safety, and welfare. So I move that we deny.
Madam Chair, could I ask for a clarification? I don't know where the 90 came from, Steve. We've never asked for 90. We've asked for a variance not to exceed 150 feet.
Right.
Well, it's existing as
The 90
60,
is
so
the
when,
additional.
Oh, in addition to. Thank you. Thanks for the
Okay.
clarification.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
aye.
Opposition?
Opposed.
Okay, opposition. Vote it down. Do I hear a motion then to approve?
I move to approve the variance request to allow an additional 90-foot of building height for the contiguous structure with the stipulation that should the client not materialize, that variance would disappear,
And based on the findings of fact?
and based upon the findings of fact.
Okay, do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Can-
Aye. Any opposition? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
The,
All right, that's the tough one.
the third item on the agenda Church of God of America Incorporated has applied for a conditional use permit on a property located at 2630 Pearville Road, Danville. The property is zoned agricultural residential. Steve?
Yes, ma'am. All right, I think this is the case that most of the folks here are for, I think. We had an application filed on December 28th, again, 2017, that you heard. However, as you guys know, this application was filed twice before, but withdrawn due to notice issues, ad, incorporated names, et cetera. So we've had this case filed. It's been on the docket. I think staff report was even drafted last time, and then it was withdrawn. So the staff report's going to look very similar. A few minor changes, but I'll go through that. The applicant that you see is New Birth Temple of Deliverance Ministries Incorporated. The property owner is Church of God of America Incorporated. The location of the property is 2630 Perryville Road. It's zoned AR1, or agriculture as we know it. The property size is 14.067 acres. And again, the applicants are requesting a conditional use permit, or CUP as we call it in the office, for a rehabilitation home in the AR1 agricultural zoning district. Page 1 of your staff report, again, shows a little close-up shot of the track. And you can see it by, this aerial was shot basically before the construction of the church. You can see the drainage area, and you can kind of see part of the track. Page 2, you see the actual PVA parcel. It's fairly relevant today, too, because if you look at the parcel, there's a piece of the property that drops back, kind of shifts over to the left. There's folks that live around there that have had some concerns. There's been calls about the project. And what we're looking at the aerial, or the parcel, the church is up in this area. The new facility would be to this part, and then there's other property that kind of gets back here that ties in with the other folks. So that's why so many letters went out to adjacent folks. But there's been a lot of talk about what's going to be where on the property. Page of your staff report right there on page 2 is interesting, and we're going to walk through some stuff a little extra here. That's the zoning ordinance reference, and I think we've done this maybe one time too since I've been here, but clearly the agricultural district is listed, and it tells us what we can do by right. And then as you go through the ordinance, it tells you what you got to have by conditions, like a bed and breakfast. In fact, we've done a bed and breakfast, I guess, since we've been here. Interesting enough, this item 4 allows other things: hospitals, nursing home, convalescent homes, rest homes, orphanages, and it says rehabilitation homes. So in the agricultural district, next one down says junkyards, airport. So a little odd, we allow so many things in the ag district. In a lot of communities, the ag district allows you to farm or live, maybe have a church or school and scale, but not big. In Boyle County, we allow a lot of things to be in the ag district by right. And obviously, we allow 11 things there that you can get if you're successful in getting a conditional use permit. And even number 11 there that says any other use that's determined by you guys. So that's a little odd language to say we can do a lot of things in the ag district other than just have a farm or live there. But that's, the CUP is for a rehabilitation home. I think that comes to the center of what's been a lot of concern of the neighbors, feedback the applicants got. Before we get much further, I thought it was interesting, and this is not in your packet. The definitions aren't going to be shown there because goof up on the ordinance. Our ordinance is not digital, so I thought it was interesting to show you some definitions, and they just sort of cross themselves out. But the first one in yellow, obviously, deals with overnight accommodations. And one of the issues that's come up is, what is a rehabilitation home? So again, the name sort of got blanked out when we tried to highlight them because this is a scanned document, but this ordinance definition right there is for overnight accommodation. Clearly that's not what the facility is. These deal with child care facilities. There's been folks ask, what is it? What is rehabilitation? Does that allow child care? Does that allow overnight stay? So we got definitions on child care. We got a definition of what's a family. We've got a definition, I think that's more relevant, of a halfway house and a group home. But it's interesting, the group home specifically says does not include alcohol or drug treatment centers. That's different in this community than other communities. Normally, the group home is kind of everything, and then you sort of break down what's a halfway house, what's drug and alcohol, what's an orphanage, what's a convalescent home. So then in our county here, we have a definition of group home, and then a halfway house. But here's rehabilitation home, and that's what the applicants are asking for. It says a dwelling shared by 4 or more patients and resident staff who live together as a single housekeeping unit for the purpose of alcohol and/or drug treatment. And if you go back again to our ordinance, the zoning ordinance, we say that you can have a hospital, nursing home, convalescent home, rest home, orphanage, or rehabilitation home in the ag district with the CUP. Does not say you can have a group home, halfway house, multifamily, overnight accommodation. Those things aren't permitted. You have to go to a different zoning district. So one of the confusing things to the neighbors has been, how come you can even ask for this in the ag district? Well, the answer is right there on that page that comes out of the zoning ordinance. It's that those things are uses permitted by condition. So a rehabilitation home is clearly defined in our ordinance as a home where you stay, you receive care, counseling, you might stay overnight, you might not stay overnight. There's obviously staff, and it's for drug and alcohol treatment. So the applicants have asked for a CUP for that. Earlier applications, there was issues about, well, it wasn't rehab, it was child care, or it was adult care, or it was group home. So there was some question terminology issues because of our ordinance being specific on all those things, as opposed to just saying everything's a group home. So a rehabilitation home is that, and that's what they're asking for today. So we'll jump into the zoning ordinance. Again, this is the page that says you guys have the ability to add conditions, just like on variances. And then we're going to walk through some stuff on the application that's in your packet. You have the site plan. But one of the concerns we had for this case was, and you can see Article 39321 says, again, you guys can add conditions, and they've added a narrative, fairly small narrative, but there was more in the site plan. It says the applicant desires to build The Lighthouse, a nonprofit faith-based rehabilitation home for the treatment of drug and alcohol addiction. The home will be a 16-bed facility constructed on the 14-plus acres of the New Birth Temple Delivery Incorporated as part of the ministry of the church. One of the prior issues was it said 16-plus bed. We thought they should define how big, how many beds. They've now said it's 16 beds. Before it said 16 plus. However, this is the same narrative from the prior staff report that was withdrawn. Those 6 items that are right below there, they've submitted a conceptual plan that shows a building, parking, other plank fence. We suggest that since those weren't offered up in the application and signed off on, they either need to come up here and say, we agree to those conditions. Those aren't really conditions in my opinion, since they were just narrative on that concept plan. So to lock down that concept plan and say we agree to this, what we've got is an application says we're going to have 16 beds on 14 acres, but all the details that you see, how big the building would be, the materials, all the things that are on that concept plan weren't specific on the application. So to get those as written conditions, we either need them written down and signed, but the concept plan outlines at least those 6 things. We think the applicant should at least agree to those formally here, or if you guys modify them some degree, that's where they go. But there's the issues 1 through 6, which are basic square footage of the building, the materials on the building, those 22 paved parking spaces, the plank fence that's shown several places on the concept plan. There's another future building that's not very defined how big. The main building says it's going to be 9,354 square feet. But then there's a future building with very little detail for us to know what's happening in that building and when does it happen. We thought that should be clarified too. And then the last one shows a septic system on the back part of the property to serve this facility. That's been, I guess, an item of back and forth with us and the applicant. What I've understand in Danville and Bull County is before you decide you're going to use a septic system, you first have to ask the local utility jurisdiction if you have to connect to sewer, or do you get a waiver from sewer. I've talked with the city of Danville, and they've indicated to me that the applicant has not come and asked for a waiver from the sewer, and in their opinion, this facility may have to connect to public sanitary sewer. Now, they've said, they've talked to the health department, they're okay with putting in a second septic system on the property, But the way the protocol works in the county is you first got to go ask Danville, do I have to connect? Is sewer close enough? Is it going to be a requirement? And if Danville says no, then you can go on and explore the septic system option. So one of the conditions we're asking, the new conditions, is that they do just that. If they go ask Danville whether or not they have to connect to sewer, and if Danville says they do, then they need to commit to that or get that waiver that says they can go on and have a second septic system. So that's on page 5 of your staff report of these other conditions that I'll get to in just a second. But obviously the septic sewer has been an issue for the staff as we sort of figure out the scale of this property and what actually is going to actually serve it as far as sanitary services like that. Bottom of page 4, again, the zoning ordinance talks about how you guys look at conditional use, how you make your findings. And then page 5 is where the staff items of concern are. And I'll jump to that. You guys don't have to turn around. It's a fairly long narrative there. But what we're saying, again, as our items of concern, is there are several things on that concept plan that are fairly identifiable that we think need to be agreed to as conditions, if that's what the applicant indicates. And then we'll walk through these 6 other items here because they are kind of big deals for us and things that we need to address. The first one, and it really jumps outside of this board, it's kind of what you heard on the prior case, is when the church was built, they had to get a site plan approval from the Planning Commission. So when the church was constructed, they went before the Planning Commission, got a site plan approval, and then got a zoning permit to construct the church. There's several items related to that site plan approval that are still not in compliance. And what we've done is actually we've been in a code enforcement posture with the applicant, friendly at this point, about, hey, how are we going to fix these things? And when the applicant came forward and said, hey, we're getting ready to go on to project B, we obviously said, we'd like you to finish project A first before we get there. So we've actually issued a notice of violation to the applicant, and their attorney has contacted us. We're working on a process timeline to get it in compliance. But what we asked for is in that number 1. It's fairly long, but what we basically said is we want them to make it as a condition of this approval, if you all see fit, that everything that was approved in the site plan phase and the zoning permit be constructed and done and certified before they move on to the back part of the property and go on to the next project. And those things specifically were the construction of the drainage facility was supposed to have a concrete weir. It was not installed. We want as-built certification by a licensed engineer for the entire drainage facility located currently on the site. The site lighting's not in compliance with the current site plan approval. It was supposed to be a paved facility, striped parking, handicap spots, all of the things that were supposed to be on phase 1. There's several things that haven't been done yet that tie into the Planning Commission's approval for the site. We would suggest as a condition of approval, if this application does move forward, that all those things need to get done before we move on to Plan B. That's a lot of the concern of some of the neighbors, is we never got the first phase done, and the drainage has gotten away from us somehow. And I'm going to go back to that first drawing. It's hard to see, but that drainage basin right there that you see, drainage, it's not really a basin, it's a drainage feature, was supposed to be constructed in a little different shape. There was a pipe that was supposed to be in this location that ended up here. A concrete weir is supposed to be on this side. There's several components of that drainage structure that were on the site plan in very hard detail that were reviewed and approved and signed off on. And then when the actual field construction happened for the drainage structure, it changed. So what we've asked for is that they certify that the structure was built according to the plan, and if not, that it meets whatever drainage need that was needed to happen with the construction of the church. But it clearly does not match the site plan specifics with the location of the pipes, the concrete weir, and even the actual shape of the drainage structure. Those are engineering issues, and I think they may have their folks here to talk about that. But that's something in the code enforcement back and forth we've been in the middle of, is how are we going to get the first phase in compliance with paving, parking, drainage, site lighting. And then let's talk about the second part. So then we get down to number 2, and I've already mentioned that on this page. I'll just leave that up there. Number 2, again, talks about the public sanitary sewer, that they either connect the sewer, commit to connect the sewer, or say that they'll get us a waiver before they move on to the sanitary or the septic system. And we've checked that with the city, and they concur that's the process, and that's a condition that they're comfortable with. Number 3, again, that future building, we would recommend it either come off the plan or they commit to us how big it is, what it's going to be, whatever. Put some verbiage on this concept plan that we can scribble down and figure out what that, it says 4 bay, but how big, how tall, what are the materials? We didn't get much detail on that other building, so either take it off the plan or tell us what that is. Number 4, it says the exact number of beds. They did clarify that from the last staff report, but we got 22 parking spaces that are curious to us. We'd like to know how many employees are going to be in this facility. So that condition number 4 was in the prior report, still there. I think it's still applicable. It says the applicant should state as a condition of approval the exact number of beds, we do know that, to be served by this facility, and the maximum number of persons to be employed by the facility. We don't know that. Again, that ties into those parking spaces. 22 parking spaces for what, for who, how do they relate either to the church or to the other facility? Number 5 says the staff would suggest that the applicant either show the location and species of anticipated landscaping or state as a condition of approval that they're going to meet our ordinance. Clearly, what we've got on that concept plan right there does not meet our landscape requirement for what they're getting ready to build for that parking. The church, a little different landscape requirement because it was a church in the ag district, but we're starting to build what I'll call somewhat of an institutional style building back there. The zoning ordinance has landscape requirements. We don't see any landscape detail on that exhibit at all. We thought as a condition of approval, if they at least commit to, we'll do what the landscape ordinance says at the site plan or zoning permit level, that would be appropriate. And then 6, we didn't get any information about signage on the property. Signs for the church, for the other facility. There's 2 different business names here, 2 different really kind of things happening, but really tied in with one church. We thought that should be clarified too. So those are our items of concern, those 6 items, in addition to the things that they committed to. We think they need to all really be locked down here by the applicant or fine-tuned by you guys if you see fit. And that's kind of everything I have, unless you guys have any specific questions for me. I believe the applicant's here. You guys got their concept plan in your packet. I apologize it's not on the screen. I believe they have an attorney and maybe even some technical folks, engineer, I'm not sure.
I'd like to have them have, Mr. Irvin. We may have questions for you later, Steve.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Bill Irwin. I'm counsel attorney of record for New Birth Temple Deliverance of Ministries Incorporated and Church of God of America, Inc. These are both nonprofit corporations, 501c3 corporations, duly authorized to do business in the state of Kentucky, properly registered with the Secretary of State. While there are 2 entities, Church of God of America, Inc. owns the land. New Birth Temple is the entity that's operating the church and the new business on the land. So that's why there's 2 different corporations. I appreciate Mr. Hunter pointing out exactly what we're requesting. The church, as built on this land, is permitted of right. That's an easy one. You're permitted in agriculture, AR1 district, to build a church. Then you go on to what's permitted by condition. And a rehabilitation home is permitted in this area by condition, and it's up to you to put the conditions on there. So you can't just go out there and build anything by right. You must have, it must be pursuant to the conditions approved by P&Z. The request is to build a lighthouse, which is, we're using the exact definition that's in your ordinance, a rehabilitation home for drug and alcohol treatment, and that's exactly what's going to be built. The conditions are as set forth in the plat, and I can tell you today that we agree that we would agree to make the conditions what's submitted to you. Does that make sense? He wanted us to say, if you're going to build this, the conditions will be as what's set forth on the plat. Preston, I see you looking at me kind of strange.
Go ahead.
So the plat has been, the site plan has been designed by Mr. Gooch of AGE Engineering. He's here today. What we're telling you is we're going to build the facility pursuant to those plans with all the site, with what is on there as a condition. So let me just explain to you a couple things. One, I'd like to tell you what we're building and why. The lighthouse will be a 16-bed facility that will be constructed adjacent to the church. We have the church built there now. It was first occupied in December of 2015. The building, as you see in the drawings, will be built directly behind the church building. It really won't be visible from the road. It will be a brick building. I know you've all seen the church. It's a very beautiful church building that's been erected there. And the building that's going to be erected for the rehabilitation home will be of the same type and nature. It'll be a brick facility and properly built. The entity itself will be licensed by the Commonwealth of Kentucky as a Behavioral Health Services Organization, or a BHSO, as well as an alcohol and other drug entity. It will also be accredited. The accreditation will not be permitted until 1 year after it is being fully operational. Those are the requirements. You have to be up and operating for a period of 1 year before you can request accreditation. Again, it will be built on this 14-acre tract of land. That map is prior to the church. We've submitted to you the site plan, which shows the entire acreage. I brought another map. I didn't bring it. Mr. Gooch brought this in today, and I can pass this around or however you want to see it, but it shows the current church building as it exists today with all the neighbors surrounding it, and it shows the 14 acres we're talking about with a little more definition, and also shows the buffering zone in between where this facility is going to be and the neighbors. So we can present that to you, or I can pass it around, however you want to do it. The building itself, again, will be in compliance with the drawings that were submitted to you. It will have proper landscaping. I have with me an estimate from PAC's Landscaping to landscape the building properly. It will have fencing as drawn on there. There's already been an estimate obtained for the fencing. But any of the questions regarding the exact drawing can be, Mr. Gooch is here to address those. This building will cost $800,000 to build. It will be a building that will have dorm space, 16-bed facility, as well as a central area, common area. It'll also have counseling areas and areas for staff. There was a question, I'm glad he raised that as well. This facility will employ 20-plus persons. Now, it'll be a round-the-clock facility. Persons will live here, 16 persons at a time, which will require that there'll be staff around the clock. It will also employ a clinical director, therapist, psychologist, licensed clinicians, nurse practitioners, peer support specialists, case managers, food staff, maintenance, that sort of thing at the facility. Again, it will bring approximately 20-plus good-paying jobs to the area. And to my knowledge, Mr. Anderson will have no environmental impacts on the community. It'll also have an annual stimulus of it's estimated $700,000 to $800,000 annually to the community as an economic stimulus. Which it brings me to, why is this being proposed and why is this needed in this area? And that's one of the questions you must ask, is this good for the public welfare? And I think we can all just look around at the news and answer that question. But we in this country are dealing with a drug epidemic, and it is not, Boyle County is not omitted from that epidemic. And we have a serious issue in this community and around the state and around the country. Boyle County does not have currently a rehabilitation home for treatment of drug and alcohol abuse. The community has, in my view, really stepped up recently in really talking about this issue and working on this issue and engaging the proper people in discussing the issue, but this is the type of thing where we have the citizens of the community really stepping up and saying, okay, as part of the ministry of this church, we see this as a need and we're going to invest in this facility. Again, it's an $800,000 building investment they're going to make, which will house and treat 16 persons at a time. And unfortunately, that's a very small number compared to what's actually needed. If you go to district court on any day, people are going to rehabilitation every day. So it'll be filled immediately once it's built. But this church, this religious entity, sees this as a ministry they can provide for this community, and it'll be part of their church. Now, this will be a faith-based program. The program itself will engage in counseling and rehabilitative solutions, which will be Christian and religious in nature. There will also be some agricultural-based learning, mentoring, and career exploration programs. The church sees this more than just drug and alcohol rehabilitation. They really want to go the next step and help these persons engage back into the community, find a job, get back on their feet, that sort of thing, within the community. So they see it twofold there. A number of issues that were brought up by Mr. Hunter, and I'll attempt to address those. Again, the site plan that has been submitted and drawn by AG Engineering, we will agree to make what's on that site plan a condition of the conditions which would be approved for this facility. The site plan that was previously approved by Planning and Zoning dealt with the church, and again, the church opened in December of 2015. That plan, and really it was there's a few things I need to address on there. One is the concrete weir we're talking about. That's where the pipe goes through. That was overlooked. We do have an estimate from Souter Excavating, who does work for the city and then did the site plan work for this facility, the church. To put in the weir, it's a $3,000 job, but it's less expensive if he does it in conjunction with the new work that's going to be done on the facility. Same thing with the paving. There's an estimate been received for $94,000 worth of paving to be done on the property. However, it doesn't make any sense to spend the $94,000 when you know you're going to have construction and all the trucks and everything driving over the blacktop. So our proposal, what I've been talking about with Steve, is we will agree to do the paving in conjunction with the development of this second part of the project. But it wouldn't make sense to spend $94,000 and blacktop everything and then drive huge trucks and break up all the blacktop as you're building this 9,000 square foot facility. We do have a letter from the state of Kentucky showing that there are no problems with the drainage. It's been approved by the state of Kentucky. They show that there's no violations, no problems with the current storm drainage. The septic system, we do have currently the church is on a septic system, which is approved by the Boyle County Health Department, and there's a letter we've received showing that the health department has approved this new layout. They've already done the perk test and everything's approved for the septic system for this additional facility. This is the first I've heard about whether or not the city must approve another septic system versus hooking onto the sewer system. I don't have the answer for you on that one, but I submit to you we can ask the city what the issue is there. Signage, I heard that brought up. There's two types of signage. There's advertising signage and then there's directional signage. There would be no reason to advertise this facility, the Lighthouse Rehabilitation Center. There would likely be a sign for the church, and under that, something identifying the lighthouse for directional purposes. So anybody coming down the road would be able to, if they were looking for the lighthouse, they would know where to go. But we don't see in any way a need or desire to advertise the facility that's located behind the church. We've discussed it. There will be between 5 to 10 vehicles on site daily to operate the facility. Those would be employee vehicles. In addition to that, whatever church business is going on, there would be vehicles going back and forth to the church. The patients there would not have vehicles. We don't see that there would be a great deal of traffic going in and out of the church. Now, obviously, the church hopes that on Sundays there are 100 vehicles in the parking lot, as any church would hope. And weddings, et cetera, there could be more vehicles. But on a daily basis, as far as operating the rehabilitation home, we see 5 to 10 vehicles parked in the parking lot. I'll be glad to attempt to answer any questions, and Mr. Gooch is here. He can answer any questions about the site plans, but I hope I've addressed the questions Mr. Hunter raised.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You're showing a sleeping area. Is this for men, women?
It was men only.
Men only.
To start out, it's too difficult at this point to start out operating as a co-ed unit.
Would this be just a room with bunks?
Yes. Yes, it
Okay.
would.
How many square feet is in that sleeping area?
It's on there, the total building's 9,000 square feet, but. Okay. Yeah. He said the sleeping area is 900 square feet?
There's 16 beds?
Yeah. I have to pull the site plan to look at that. It's in the,
That seems rather small for 16 beds.
Out of 9,300 square feet, there's 600 square feet.
man, did you, Doug, you want to come up and answer, can you answer that question?
What's the bathroom?
We didn't have anything to do with the building
Oh,
design.
okay. All right.
We did site design. Any question on the site? Bill, if I have any questions I can answer.
Not different than what we submitted at the top of the application.
It's only about 56 square feet per person. It's only about 56 square feet per person in a sleeping area. That seems kind of small to me.
Yeah, you come on up here, Tim, and answer that.
Yes, sir. Could you state your name, please?
Yes, Bishop Tim Napier.
And raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statement you're about to make are true and correct?
I declare.
Okay. And how big is that room, sir?
Give or take, it may be 900 to 1,000. The state only requires for the whole residential setting, I think it's around 62.
Hold on a second, Tim, we're gonna move this thing.
Okay. 62 square feet per resident, and the building, I'm sorry that I thought that had been sent. The new building is only going to be 3125 square feet. It'll be just like a big home, look just like a residential home, and then we will have the common areas that would be in there, and then there'd be 3 offices, and then there'd be like a kitchen, and then there would be the sleeping area. But all the requirements by the Inspector General's office, the State Fire Marshal, these plans are approved, but will be approved by them. Rusty Cox has looked at the plans to see if there's any initial changes that needs to be made on his side, but we will have to meet all state requirements. The final inspection will be done by the Inspector General's office, the State Fire Marshal.
So you're not using this 9,300 square feet?
No,
You're using
I-
3,100 square feet?
Yeah,
Whatever's attached to the site plan, I thought it said it was 9,000 square feet.
It is 9,300.
yeah, that was originally, I don't know why that wasn't submitted.
Well, it's 16 beds.
Can you
At
show them that?
62 feet per person would require 992 square feet. So it would need to be have to be approximately 1,000 square feet in the sleeping area.
Yeah. The state, the total building, they only require 62-something per square feet per resident for the whole building.
For the whole building.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
See, there's a bath and a half for 16 people?
Let me, can they look at that?
Are you looking at this?
If you please.
Bathroom there. And bath there.
That's it. This one.
That's not there.
They only require 1 per 8. That's, and those bathrooms would be, with the plumbers, they would be redesigned. They require 1 shower, 1 basin, and 1 commode per 8 residents. And then there will also be a bathroom that would be used by the staff on the other end.
I don't see any provision for staff living there.
No staff lives there. They will work there at nights, called house managers or shift supervisors. And you see where the operation office is, up near where the residence and the bathrooms is, that would be their office.
So they're gonna be staying over in the office?
No. They will work shifts, just like any other rehab home or nursing home or whatever. There would be 3 shifts, first shift, second shift, and third shift.
Are these people, are you, there's gonna be 24/7, someone on site in a shift?
That's
Now,
correct.
How about the medical? Is it gonna be, when is it gonna be available?
Medical will be provided on day shift, even shift, and probably on night shift, there would be an on-call registered nurse on call at night.
Where are these people actually coming from? The court system or?
Most of the people will be coming through where they need through the state, the Cabinet of Family Services. We would receive most of the residents from them, and then there would be private people that has their own insurance, but most of the people would be coming through the Cabinet of Family Services.
Is financing in place?
Yes, yes.
Would there be additional daytime clients coming in, outpatient?
Not at this time. There's a possibility, you're outside NA, we will have an on-site NA and also AA, and part of that would be within the church site.
If you have 16 inpatients, 16 patients, and you have a staff of 24, you're probably gonna have more people on the day and evening shift than the night shift. the
That is
late night.
correct.
So you could have like 26 to 28 people there. I'm really concerned about not having a sewer connected instead of just doing a septic tank. I think with that
Well-
many additional people, you would really need a sewer connection.
I looked at it, I contacted the city, we never did get a response, more or less to see about studying it, whether they could run it to the building, because it's way up near where I think Mayor Mike Parrish, so it's way up there near Shell. It's not available to the subdivision there down below the church. They own septic system, and we had the health department come in, and they reviewed it with their supervisor, and they gave the clearance that there could be a septic system put there at their facility,
Yeah, I
because
realize-
you're only having 16 residents and a few staffs.
Yeah, I realize the church is on a septic system, but that's used once or twice a week. We're talking about every day.
Yes, and I understand that.
20 or plus people, so that can make a difference.
Right.
What age group? Are we talking about juveniles, adults?
No, this would not be a juvenile, these would be adult clients.
Okay.
How long is the stay?
The stay here will be around 28 to 30 days. It will be a short-term program, and then they will rotate out when these 16 complete that program, graduation, go through all the Christian life skill programs. They get certified that they have graduated from this program, whether they will go back into what I say society contributing. We're going to create and teach them jobs, life skills, culinary. We're going to teach them agricultural because the University of Kentucky, K-State, is going to be involved with the agricultural teaching. So we're going to make sure that they are very busy while they're there. But this will only be a 28 to 30-day facility, and then.
So it's a voluntary situation if you're gonna mandate a criteria that they stay with.
Yes,
Is that right?
right.
I'm
That's
going,
all.
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Linda.
Well, there are, yes, and there will be certain things they have to complete or they will be asked to leave. This is a voluntary deal. They're going to sign up for this program and come to this program. They're going to be drug screened, and they're going to meet the criteria and the rules of the facility, or they're going to be removed from the facility. But at the same time, it's not a court-ordered, we don't really do court-ordered drug rehab.
I guess I'm going back to sewer again. Would you agree that the facility be placed on a sewer system?
I would, if the city could ensure integrity that they can run it there and assist with the costs. I think it's going to be a lot of complications. I think even with the city, and there may be where they will have to use right-of-ways. And I think if it was available, that's what we would rather hook up on. But then again, for the design, with the approval of the health department, their supervisor with the state, they came in and looked at the site plan and said that it could behold the 16 residents that we would have there.
I'm
I'd like to
thinking,
go back
oh, go ahead.
to financing. I just want to make certain that that is in place, because I'm making possibly the assumption that the reason some of these other requirements for planning and zoning when you did the initial application have not been completed. Was that a result of lack of monies?
Well, to be honest and truthful with you, we knew eventually that we was going to do something with this facility for our future ministry when we bought the 14 acres, and we knew that we was going to do something. And we probably would have had to tore out some of the parking lot due to running underground utilities, heavy equipment, and then you got to realize in the back that we're going to add, I think it's like 5 or 6 more parking spaces, and the road that will go in for the dumpster to come out if needed. All that would have to be tied in, and we saw no need to address that at that time. And funding was, and we have sought funding. There will be some fundraising, and then we will look at, there's a bank that has already looked at the total project for all of the black topping, the weird, the building itself, the campus, the landscape. And we have had a landscape company come in that's going to look at whether we need to go around the neighbors and border it with trees, fully landscape that area, and then the building would be highly landscaped, and then we're going to put a fence completely around the project. So we do already have bids on that.
I have some concerns about the future building. Personally, I would not be in favor of approving a future building that we know nothing about.
Okay, can I explain that? Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Go ahead.
Can I explain that to you?
Okay.
The future building would have been a storage building that we would have to storage food in, and the building that we're looking at doing would probably be like a 54 by 25, and it would have like 3 bays, almost something like out here at the Methodist Church. If you've been out there, they have a very nice building that looks like a garage detached garage. And then you go out on Harrisburg Road, they have a metal one with the same concept, and they use that to store their equipment in, because we will have a small agricultural equipment, beds, food needs to be stored, and that's what that building will be. It would not be a future building for residents. That would be only consider a place to storage equipment and food in.
I'm still a little bit fuzzy about who exactly is doing this. Are you leasing the land from, is the Church of God leasing the land?
Well, Church of God, to clear that up, I've been the bishop of the Church of God, been on the board for 40 years. Actually, when we purchased the property from Gethsemane, and Gethsemane was going to build 3 big buildings on that property, and for some reason they decided not to build, and we was looking for a location, and we purchased that from it. So Church of God of America was the entity when we filed the deed for the property, but New Birth, we changed the name to New Birth Temple Ministries, and that actually is the name of the church, if that clarifies.
So it's the same thing?
Yes. Mhm.
It's the same.
They're one.
The same in
They are
one.
two
I'm the
names.
president over both of them and the registry agent.
I imagine we'll hear from local residents, but I want to try to anticipate some of their interests and see what your thoughts are on things like, what do we know about the effect of similar rehabilitation homes on the communities where they exist now? Does it increase the crime rate? And they probably have an interest in what they're going to see and what they're going to experience. So maybe talk more about the fence. How tall is it? And is it the type of fence that you can't slide through and you can't see through? Is it, or is it more like a horse fence? And will there be security cameras and lighting and alarms and things like that?
Yes, I thank you for being able to answer that. The fencing would be something that would be very comfortable what is already in that area, because we want it to fit the landscape of the residents that lives out there, the church, to look at the church.
So it's like a horse fence?
Well, the plank fence. It'd be like the
Okay.
plank fence. And then the agricultural 4 acres in the back will be like a wire fence with a board, because that's where we're gonna have our gardens, we're gonna have our berries, all the things that will be raised and grown there through the programs of the University of Kentucky and Kentucky State University. There would be policies and procedures put in place, just like any other. We will be under the health management of the Department of Family Services and the Inspector General. So there's certain KARs that we got to meet our procedures for staff, for training, ensure integrity, that the right staff is hired. There will be audits, accreditation. If the neighbors are aware, if, say one walks off, and, you know, it's just like anything, they may get 25 days and say that they do not want to be a part of the program. They have a right to not to leave that facility, but if there was a after hours, that building will be secured with staff. There will be cameras, making sure of security. And if there was one to walk off at 9 o'clock to get out of the building, and I don't foresee that with the security that we would have at that building, there would be a notification to any of the neighbors around, just like some jails and prisons or whatever, they have a notification. But there is policies and procedures that is put in place, and
But since this is voluntary, anybody could leave whenever they wanted to.
Yes,
Is 28 to 30-day treatments found to be effective?
pretty well. And what they will do, they will be addressed. We will encourage them to get into a long-term facility. But at this point, 28, 30 days is, we modeled it after a program, I'm sure y'all heard of the Isaiah House. The initial placement is the Patricia Place, And our facility will be based on the Patricia Place and some of the other facilities that's in, like Campbellsville, maybe Covington, and Louisville, and everything. But it will be faith-based. I have polled people, and I really think that the success of drug and alcohol treatment is that a lot of private people have it, cities and counties, and we have found that faith-based because there is the spiritual emphasis that is put in. These guys are women, whichever one we find out the specific need that we're going to place in there. They need the spiritual. Everybody's been affected. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, somewhere in your family has been touched by drug or alcohol, and I think treatment is very important. So, with the life skills, the faith-based, there's things that we can do that hopefully we can turn them around where that they just placed in a facility, maybe something like the Shepherd House, where they just go and they're not committed to where they have to stay. When they come there, there's no vehicles, there's no telephones, no electronic games and all of that. When they come there, we want to get them healthy. Initially coming in, if they got problems with dental, they got problems with vision, they got any medical problems, we're going to address all of those things because we want them physical, spiritually, and the disease that they have, whether it's alcohol or drug, that we are recognizing and we are treating that also.
I have a question for Mr. Irvin. You said that they're licensed by who?
The state of Kentucky as a behavioral health services organization. It's referred to as a BHSO. BHSO, Behavioral Health Services Organization, and there'll also be an alcohol and other drug entity. Now, and the reason behind there's, you have to meet the requirements of the state and be licensed by the state before you can accept Medicaid or any state benefits as for the patients that are coming in. So that's, they will have to meet all of the state requirements, like he's saying, for not only the facility, but how it's operating, and they must meet all the regulations of how to operate on a daily basis.
You call them patients, but are they really patients?
Clients?
I will
patients?
call them clients, residents, just like you and me.
Since they are licensed by the state, is there any bonding issues to make sure that all these things that are promised are complied with?
I don't know of any bonding issues with the state because the state's not putting up any money to build the facility. The state will, if there was a facility up and running right now and you decided you wanted to accept Medicaid, you could go to them and say, now, I want to be licensed by the state. They come in and inspect, and then you can start receiving Medicaid patients.
How old is the church?
Church began operation in December of 2015.
Okay, so, and the compliance on the driveway has been out of compliance for the last 3 years?
It hasn't been paved.
It hasn't been paid.
I appreciate your interests, and I do think there's a need. I'm still worried about the neighbors. Have you considered a fence with vertical slats that would mean that neighbors would see none of it and no one could go through it without, first going out to the road, which would mean that there'd be no point to bothering the neighbors?
But I would ask you just to see what. I would submit to you, first of all, that the patients, clients, whoever you're dealing with here, first of all, they're not in jail, right? They're not, in all likelihood, not incarcerated for any reason. In all likelihood, David, you're going to see them at their very best, all right? They are going to be clean and sober. We know that because they're going to be drug tested, and we're going to know that. So I submit to you that, you go out to Walmart right now, you're walking around, and there's a room full of people who are drug addicts and alcoholics. You just don't know it, right? But you're going to see the people who are in this facility. When they're there, they're going to be at their very best. So I don't know you know, you're gonna have 16 people at the facility. Now, do they go outside to exercise? Do they go outside to work in the garden? Do they go outside to do other things? Yes, but that's what you're going to be seeing is people walking around the facility. The fence is reasonable in that it demarks the boundary lines of where these people are gonna be, and they're not allowed off of the boundary. So you now know, okay, you're not allowed to go beyond that fence. It's clearly marked. But as far, I mean, I would ask, you know, what are you expecting to see? You should be expecting to see human beings walking around every now and then around the church facility.
There are studies that show that group homes, I'm not sure about rehab, group homes throughout the country have done very well in residential areas, primarily with the mentally ill and developmentally disabled. Now, I know that drug rehab and alcohol has a different connotation probably and more fears associated with it. I think one of the things that has been very important is the involvement with the community. And I'm wondering if you've had any discussion with any of the property owners about what you're about, such as we're having here today. Have you had that with the neighbors?
No one's contacted me since we filed this.
Yeah, but has Mr. Napier contacted the neighbors, I think is what Donna is saying.
We was apt to do that, and we was looking at that, and, you know, we could have had a meeting, but we didn't do that. I think it was addressed by the letter. I think there would have been an outrage because some of the neighbors, when we got ready to build the church, I don't think they wanted the church to be built there. They said it blocked their view. They didn't think no church was going to be there. And, you know, it was even a statement to the fact that you guys didn't have the right to build a church here. And, you know, we purchased that property for our ministry. I think my time in this community, the vision that I've seen, and the community efforts that we're going to be involved with, other churches, other community-based people, that this would be a great highlight for the community. And we're going to do everything. If there's a condition, you know, to fencing or trees or whatever, we're going to do everything to be a good neighbor, because the investment initially of building that church, we wanted something that was very nice. You know, I even lived in that community. I'm probably the most knowledgeable individual of people that lives there. This year, I built that house 27 years ago, so I'm the house over, not next to the church. So I've been a part of that community since 1991. I've seen a lot of neighbors come next door. 5 people has owned that house since I lived there. We're going to do everything we can to be a good neighbor. Safety and security. You know, I just want people to think about these guys are just like family. They are brothers. They are people that need Christ. They need help, and they need healing. And hopefully we can turn away the darkness and bring forth the light of their life. And we know Danville has been touched by drugs, ODs, and this is a community effort. It's not just, there will be a board of directors that will run this program. There may be 1 or 2 off of the church, but there'll be a 12 board member that will be involved of doctors, maybe bankers, CPAs, people that has been in drugs, landowners, and then we will also have an advisory board that will advise us on how to run this facility and ensure integrity, that we are doing the things that we're supposed to be. But at the end of the day, we have to meet all of the state requirements and inspections and everything for this program. This is not just a building that's going to be built and it's just going to be run by, so you think the church, but the integrity of that is ran properly and accredited in 1 year from the day we opened this facility we have to be accredited that year by a national accreditation board. And it's gonna be a great project. And it's
I
very
have a
much needed.
question, and going back to the water, the retention basin, it's not completed the way it was on the original site plans, is that correct?
The weird concrete, and I'll be honest with you, the guy that, that Doug.
Well, no, I don't think I really need him. I just want to know, has he created water problems for any of your
No, no.
neighbors?
Let me tell you what happened here. I do want to ensure you this. Before that retention pond was put in, we had heavy flooding from waters that came down from I don't know where. And there's a lot of underground water that runs during the fall months, 24/7. There's a stream. And the rock weird is doing just what it is. But before we put the retention wall in our pond, my site in heavy rains, I would have to wait maybe an hour or two to even get out of my drive. That eliminated that problem. The neighbors next door, I remember the first person that built it, there was water up into their septic tank field, and it blocked their road before we put in the retention pond. So the weird, even the rock weird, is doing some of the things. When they was doing construction, I think maybe a little mud maybe got out when they was building the pond, but it's doing just what, and the Division of Water came out, and they inspected the project, and the retention and the running of the water and everything, because I think there was some complaints, and they came out and did an inspection, and they certified more or less that everything was put in properly. Yes, you can't do the pond exactly like it was designed. It's what it is, and it's designed right. You know, a lot of money was invested into that property. We actually built that property up somewhere where the church is, a parking lot, something like 6 feet plus.
But if you were going to change the plans, didn't you realize you had to have that approved?
No, I didn't, but the drawings to the fact how they got it, they couldn't get it just correctly like it is. And Doug would have to maybe tell you about the reason why that
I
some
don't
of
think
that
the
was
reason
changed.
why matters. I think it matters that you didn't get it approved before you did it. That's what my concern is. It's not the reason why it was changed. Maybe it had to be changed, I don't know. But it should have gone through the proper process before you completed that.
Well, and I'm sorry, as an apology, we would never done something that we did not think that was right, that when the guy done the construction, we would never done that. Even our Christian duty, we would not done that.
What kind of transportation? That's a bit far for walking distance to town.
If
people
they-
do not have transportation, they're gonna feel a little bit isolated.
They-
Maybe this situation works out better in a metro area.
They will not be able to walk or go anywhere without staffing. If they have to go to the doctor, if they have to go to whatever, there will be a van, a staff transportation that will take them. Never at any time will they even walk up at the store, or they will walk down the street or whatever without any supervision.
Are we going to hear from neighbors?
Yes, yeah. Does anybody have any other questions for them at this time?
You're telling me that the floor plan that we're seeing now is not the floor plan that you're using?
This is the floor plan we submitted. I'm not sure what you.
Yeah, they were looking. Are you looking at this one?
Yeah,
I'm looking for when I got 9,000 square feet.
yeah,
No.
that's what it is. That's what I've got. That's what
No,
it says.
that's really 31, 35. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where the 93 came from.
It's on the site plan. It's on the site plan. Difference.
What site plan?
This one right here. You guys turned into this one.
Must be earlier.
It has it right on here.
I'm gonna owe you a box of these things.
Good, I'm glad they came in handy.
What you just passed around is the right one?
Yeah, they think
What is that, what is that one that you on the road there? That gate on the road? The one that,
Right here.
no, I'm talking about the round one. The two that I gave you before Doug came in.
Is this the correct site plan?
I'm confident this is the right site plan based on what's gonna be.
Okay. Does anyone have any more questions for them now? Not now, okay.
And it's okay that I come back, is that right? I
We'll
can do that?
probably have you come back. We'll have more
Thank
questions.
you very much. Thank you so much.
Do you have one question? Okay. Is anyone else here that wants to speak in favor of this? All right, Kevin?
Just to clarify, are we hearing that what was submitted is not the plan they intended?
No, they say what we have here is the plan.
I don't understand the disparity in the 9,300 and the 3,100.
that lady there back here.
I said, I don't understand the disparity in the 9,300 square feet and the 3,100 square feet.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah, like 1/3.
Yeah, huge difference.
All right, first of all, my name's Kevin Nesbitt, I'm an attorney here in Danville. I was hired by some of the neighbors to represent their interests. They are strongly opposed to this development. There are some things I'd like to get into the record, just as, just for purpose of having them in the record. It's been represented to you that
Kevin, you're not
Okay.
gonna be recorded, sorry.
It's been represented to you that the Church of God of America, Inc. is the owner. That's not correct. The property was deeded in 2011 to the Church of God of America. That's it. The Church of God of America, I have a certified copy of that from the county clerk. The Church of God of America was dissolved in July of 2017. Have a certified copy from the Secretary of State of that. And then I have a certified copy where the Church of God of America, Inc. was incorporated in December of 2017. So I would submit that, first of all, they don't even have a right to present this because there is no existent entity that owns that property. It's just kind of out there. They've also presented you with nothing showing that New Birth Temple of Deliverance has any sort of long-term lease, any sort of right to use that property, and they can't because there's not an existing corporation. I'll tender these into the record, and now just to go on, it's been represented to you that there are going to be 20-plus employees. That's kind of like what they started out with when they told you there were going to be 16-plus beds. Mr. Irwin represented 20-plus employees. Does that mean 50, 70? We do know that when he originally applied earlier, he estimated 40 to 70 employees. We don't know, but to say that based on that, with a 16-bed facility, you're only going to have 4 or 5 cars there at a time, and that's absurd. There are going to be people, he mentioned having AA and NA meetings. Those would be the type of meetings. Unfortunately, like Mr. Irwin, if you practice law here, you're going to end up learning a lot about alcohol and drug offenders. They have AA and NA meetings where people would come in from the outside, have meetings there, or they would take them out. We don't know, it's never been represented to us how many of those, traffic, how often that would happen. We have an indication there's going to be medical and dental needs being met. We don't know how many people there. They don't speak about what the visiting hours are, the number of visitors, as far as the number of vendors. And I would submit to you that for them to say that they have to operate this facility for a year and then go back and get a license is incorrect. I don't know why I did it. I'm glad I did now, but what I've got is an application that goes with some of the regulations that they're required to comply with. And it's specifically for alcohol or drug education facility. And it's, the initial application, it says you apply this, and statutes say that before you do that, before you begin to operate one, you fill out an additional application. You have a fire marshal by regulation, examine, approve the plans. We don't have any of that. Let's go to the sewer issue. I spoke to the city engineer. They have what's called a 201 plan. That's with the state and federal government. Mr. Hunter, I'm sure he knows more about it than I do, but this is within the area that the city of Danville wants to provide sewer service for. He was not able to tell me at that time whether he was going to require that or not, but I think it's interesting they haven't spoken to him about it. And so I'll just pass this around first. This is the application for, and if it's got a place that tells you what to do if you're applying for an initial.
Are you introducing that?
Yes.
Okay.
While we're doing that, I'm going to introduce.
Kevin, you gotta be over there before we can get you on the mic.
Coffee stains are free, but I spent a copy on this. This is a copy of the deed for the church. This is a copy where that corporation was dissolved. I would like those introduced too. There are other things in the regulations that the applicant hasn't told you about. They should be talking to, and it makes sense, they need to be talking to the hospital, law enforcement providers, of course the state fire marshal I already mentioned. They did mention another thing that they indicated that they did what they thought was best, but I would submit to you that we have a good faith issue here. We're going to have some of the residents present to you what they've had to deal with as far as drainage. It's not just a little. They didn't improve anything. We've got people whose land is being flooded, and it was built without, as a result, it saved money. I don't know they ran out of money, I don't know. But it wasn't built as required. On the east side, the drainage where they located as opposed to the site plan has actually resulted in one of the neighbors' property being rendered virtually useless. She'll tell you about that. She's got pictures. The neighbor on the west side will tell you about the fish in her yard. We'll show you the drainage pond that's been created by Mr. Napier's pond there. I would submit that this shouldn't even be considered. First of all, there's no entity that can authorize them to make this application. It's been dissolved. Second of all, it's a good faith issue until they do what they say they're going to do, said they were going to do, promised planning and zoning they were going to do with the site plan. We shouldn't even go any further. They need to make an application as required by law to get an initial plan together to show the Cabinet for Health and Family Services that they have a staffing plan. Their staffing, you are right about square footage requirements, bathroom requirements. They've got to have private counseling areas. They've got to have let's see, visiting areas, private consultation areas, laundry area. None of those things have been spoken about or complied with. All right, I'll take any questions.
I'd like to ask Bruce, I think we need a little guidance on whether we can hear it or not. We need something from you here. That's a legal term that I can't address.
Well, the hearing, I mean, I think the board has the option, if they don't believe that they have been provided with enough details to properly evaluate the request. The board certainly has the option to make that point with the applicant, continue the hearing with specific instructions to the applicant what you wish to see.
I think I'm more concerned in Kevin's comment that we don't even have the authority to hear the case because they're not the legal, not the ones who should be presenting it. That's what I want to address
Right.
this time.
Well, do we know
Here.
who signed the application?
Mr. Napier.
President of the corporation, and that's what Kevin knows this. The company was,
You need to come up to the podium.
he submitted the deed to you. Church of God of America Incorporated owns the real estate.
No, Church of God of America, and he started a new corporation and added Inc. after it. It's not
That's the
same
point, okay.
corporation. It's got a separate entity number, and I checked it this morning to see if anything had changed.
But that's the corporation that owns the real estate, Church of God of America.
Which is dissolved, it's not
And it's reinstated as Church of God of America. It was incorporated at the time, and it's incorporated now.
It was not reinstated, it's got a separate entity number.
Well, we're more than willing to address that issue. That's a red herring, ma'am. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I'm gonna let Bruce address
I
that.
submitted this, and I told them about that, so we would.
So we
all
went
come
back and
here.
changed it and reinstated the corporation.
No, they did not reinstate it, they started a new corporation.
Well, instead of you two debating it,
Yeah, I'd let
we're gonna
Bruce-
let Bruce decide on that one for us.
It gives me a chance to look at these records, Madam Chairman.
You're fine. I'm gonna owe Linda a new box of mints because I keep eating for mints. I forgot to bring any. Well, I had it. I'm on this medicine, all that, and it's on. We can take a
Do we-
2-minute recess. We're gonna be on recess for a couple minutes here. Okay, Bruce? We're back on the record.
Madam Chairman, our procedure in Danville and Boyle County is that the owner of the property, and if it's different from the applicant, both of those entities shall sign the application. And you do that for obvious reasons. As the owner, you want to make sure that you're not making some determination about the property owner's property without the property owner being on board. Now, Mr. Nesbitt is correct. The deed shows Church of God of America. It says it's a Kentucky nonprofit corporation. It doesn't have the INC period. And in fact, according to the records of the Secretary of State, that's a different entity. One was dissolved and another one was incorporated in December and January. So we tried to address this problem once before by delaying it and having an application signed by the owner of the property, and looks like we've, failed to address it once again. I will tell you that if the board is satisfied that that a representative of the property owner is, present and participating in the application, then I think you can proceed. Now, is there a technical issue created by Mr. Nesbitt? Absolutely. And can he take that beyond this body to a court? Will that court recognize it? It's possible. I don't think this matter is going to be, regardless of what we do, well, this matter is going to continue. I think if you have an option, if you want to say, heck no, there's a difference between these two owners and we're going to turn the application down on that basis, then you can do that. On the other hand, what may happen is that Mr. Irwin's client may simply reapply and will be back here, which is their prerogative, and all the folks opposing will be back here. I think your other option is that if the discrepancy on the application troubles you, you can require Mr. Irwin's client as a representative of Church of God of America Incorporated to sign off on the application. I don't blame Mr. Nesbitt for raising the issue. I think, if I were in his position, I would have raised the issue. But I guess all in all, do we have the articles of incorporation for the new entity, Church of God of America, Inc.?
They're attached to the Secretary's certificate.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Yes.
That's it.
Okay, and that shows that Mr. Napier is one of the initial board of directors and apparently the incorporator. So, you can make a decision based on this fine point, but it may just result in another application being filed. But I think we can remedy that. I think we can remedy the defect by simply having let's see, I don't have the application, but that was signed, oh, thank you. That was signed by, okay, so that's Inc., right. Let me back up just a second. You can continue this thing and let them clean up their deed record. If you're satisfied that you got the actual representative, regardless of the paperwork, if you're satisfied that you've got a representative of the owner of the property, even though technically Mr. Nesbitt's correct, the owner doesn't exist because it was an entity that was dissolved, then I think you can proceed. If it really troubles you, then my suggestion is that you continue the matter until next month, give Mr. Irwin a chance to clean up the technicalities, and then you proceed.
I would like to finish it today, if we can, and I still think that Mr. Irwin needs to clean up the bookkeeping, the record keeping.
Just so everyone knows, I made Mr. Smith aware of it, and Mr. Hunter, and we all talked about it, and that's why it was delayed last time. It didn't get cleaned up. I'm making a record here.
I understand.
I think there are plenty of other problems. I think if you look around, you've been presented nothing to show that this development would be other than a detriment to the health and safety of the neighborhood. It would be an overburdening of the public infrastructure, both as to sewer and to the traffic and congestion, which is C. And I believe all those reasons, you should turn it down just on that. But I had to make a record, and I just wanted everybody to know I wasn't trying to slip anything by. We've all talked about it, and that's why it was put off till today.
We're probably gonna have some more questions for you too.
That's fine. I would like to, I know we have some neighbors. I know
Right.
one that really wants to talk to you is the neighbor to the west.
Okay.
Ms. Estes.
Mr. Nesbitt is correct, and there was a discussion, and frankly, I thought that had been cleaned up. We attempted to address that, I think, in December.
A month or two ago.
Yeah,
It was in December.
so he's correct. I mean, it's not like this is a surprise. He did bring it up.
Would you state your name?
Yes, my name is Amber Estes.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statement you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here today, and I appreciate the board letting me have a hearsay. Just to, for visual, on the slide up there, I am to the west or to the left, looking here to the left side of the church from the road back, so this will surround two sides of me. I have presented some photographs that I would like for you to look at.
Give them to.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
My husband and I purchased the property that I mentioned earlier in February of 2011, our dream home. We had been driving up and down Perryville Road for years, looking at this home, saying, wow, that would be our dream home. And ironically, the property came open, and we were able to purchase our dream home. I was 48 years old. I'm not quite that young anymore, but I was 48 years old when I got my dream home. And that was in 2011. We noticed rather quickly the property beside us had been vacant for multiple years, and actually we had inquired about that because we loved the idea of a horse farm in the property beside us. We were not able to obtain that property, and quickly we realized that it was going to be purchased and a church was going to be built. One of the things that I would like to say on record is that this is not a Christian issue. This is not a religious issue, in my opinion. This is a moral issue. This is a compliance issue. I have been told multiple times, try to remain calm and non-emotional, but I can't help from feeling emotional about my dream property and where I wanted to raise my children and my grandchildren being at stake. We have on multiple occasions spoken to Mr. Napier about some of the issues and the problems and the concerns that we have had once the conditional use permit was granted in 2011 for the use of the church. It is not about a church. I'm a Christian as well, but it has nothing to do with religion or Christianity. On multiple occasions, the equipment that was brought in, and I'm talking about large equipment. He had excavation, he had hammers, and I'm not talking about hammers you put in your hand, equipment hammers, working on the pond, the lake, the retention. I don't know what it's really referred as. We call it a mess. As you will see in those photographs that I have presented to you, and I'm sorry that others in the audience can't see that, but if you look at Exhibit 1, this is my front yard, and if I can just orient you on the photograph, you will see the silt fence, which, by the way, was not put in until we came down to the Planning and Zoning. We, as my husband and I, came to the Planning and Zoning office on multiple occasions to complain about the mud and the silt coming over onto our property. Finally, a silt fence was installed to prevent the mud from rolling onto our property during rain, washes, etc. If you will look at that photograph, you can see a portion of the black fencing that is cut down on the back side of the photo, maybe the top of the photo. That's where the pond, the retention, the lake, whatever you want to refer it to, exists. The forward part of the picture, or the lower part of the picture, that is my front yard. Okay? And I want to make a quote that Mr. Napier made just moments ago. Quote, "I do everything to be a good neighbor. It is my Christian duty." Any neighbor that would look at that says, I am imposing a problem on my neighbor. I'm going to fix that. We approached him on multiple occasions to please do something, to please fix that. This is a problem. He said to us, if you don't like it, hire an attorney. We called and contacted, let me look at my note. We called the Conservation Office, the Department of Fish and Wildlife. We have talked to Earl Coffey, Dwayne Campbell, Paula Berry, Rusty Cox, to no avail. I have gone around and around and around and around and around to try to get a solution to the problem that this has created. Multiple occasions, the equipment ran across our yard into our driveway because they didn't have their driveway ready yet to use. We would go out and come back, and we could tell the equipment was on our property. We asked him to stop that. We have had silt, mud roll in. As you can see, that's not stopping anything. We have had to hire equipment to get the mud and the silt from our property so that we could mow. We can rarely mow there because it's always wet. And I'm not sure the exact date, but we looked out one afternoon and saw that he had a fish truck. I don't know any other way to refer it, but they pump fish, stocking ponds or whatever. And I was absolutely beyond angry because I knew what would happen, that we would have a flooding incident like this, which then produced, as you see in the photographs on page 3 and 4, dead fish all over our yard. So if his opinion is that this has no effect on his neighbor, I'm confused. I am confused about the fact that I came down to the Planning and Zoning office on multiple occasions, was directed here, there, the other. I was going around. Nothing has ever been done about this. The fact that he is non-compliant and out of compliance with, I think we've referred to it today as Project A. Nothing has been done. No one has asked him to fix those things, and nothing has been fixed. So I want to raise my children and my grandchildren here. Of course, I have fears about the demographic that may potentially be in this new project. And as you can well imagine, as we have heard Mr. Napier speak today, I think we're all confused about what in the world is going up next door, which is more scary than anything. I am absolutely terrified for my well-being of my family to be there home alone when my husband is out of town working. I want to enjoy being in my backyard without worrying about issues and problems coming from next door. If he doesn't have, I'm not a lawyer. We have lawyers here, we have lawyers present. I don't profess to be one. But there is a portion of the conditional use permit that talks about health, safety, and welfare. And I think that's what we're talking about. Okay, it's 3,000 square feet, 9,000 square feet, 6,000. We don't know how many people, 16, 28, 4, how many employees, we don't know. And as he said today, he really doesn't know. I am asking, begging, imploring this board to just forget whose name the property's in and who's applying. Nip this in the bud. This needs to be taken somewhere. This needs to be taken out of a residential community. And this, it needs to be considered. I'm asking you and challenging you to consider if he feels like the residential facility that he wants to build will not have effect on the health, safety, welfare of his neighbors, yet I've got physical proof that I have been affected. I'm asking you to, and challenging you to shut this down, stop this, so that we do not have to deal with this as neighbors. Thank you. Thank you.
We may have questions for you later, but.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? If so, raise your hand. Is that the only one? I want to know how many people is planning to speak. Okay. Kevin, We'll let them speak and then,
Ms. Pop is to the east. She's on
Okay.
the other side.
okay. Would you state your name, please?
I'm Julie Bazzaio Pop.
And raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. So I am actually the neighbor in the back half on that side over. There's the two back halves. I'm the neighbor on the back right-hand side from this picture. And we actually brought that property years ago when we first came to Kentucky to build our actual forever home. But we hadn't done it immediately because I actually run a bunch of Pizza Huts out in eastern Kentucky. So that keeps me busy right now. And then my husband actually was recruited to Amazon. So we're kind of not here a lot. But we do have our property that we live in over on 1386 Lenox in that particular area. So we actually had set up with Hellman Reynolds Realty that in the meantime, they would use the person that usually cuts our property and our grass. It was kind of like, so who maintains the property? And they said, well, we have a gentleman that cuts the property and maintains it. And all you do is let him have the hay. And I was like, oh, well, sure, no problem. It helps them, helps us, everything's good. So in the meantime, we're thinking everything is okay. The church hearing comes up. They're going to build a church in front. So basically, okay, well, that kind of opens it up to having multiple people on the property. So then we get another notice that in August, we're going to upgrade and add more to the facility. And guarantee, I know, I'm in eastern Kentucky, I know there is a drug epidemic everywhere. I really do. And we try to help those folks out, working and everything else. But as far as putting it next door, there's basically an opportunity with good faith. During this time period, I had met with some of my neighbors and found out that not only was the people that are not originally set up to cut our grass, they were different people that actually the church employed. So I was actually kind of taken aback by that. So I had found out that other people were cutting our property. We had drainage issues on the property, but I was trusting in the positive intentions of others because it did not look like the church was complete with their work, that they were going to finish the drainage job. Because our property, actually, the drainage sites that were put on the site where the church was built, because he built a land bridge for a driveway, he changed the water flow, the natural water flow of the land. And quite frankly, if we did that with a Pizza Hut out in eastern Kentucky, we'd have to rip it out as soon as it was done. But it did not appear here, so I was giving him the benefit of the doubt that it was going to be taken care of. Well, the drainage line was listed up above of where it was supposed to be placed, and now this big land bridge kind of goes down the property and has water flowing on Amber Estes' property as well as ours and backing up, which is now going to require me to have a bridge to try and get up to where we have. Because we have a 50-foot line that runs all the way down his east side of the property so that we can build our house up on that hill on the back side of it. So that's basically the deal. And I have pictures here where, the pictures that I'm gonna give you, which I'll just send them over.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. The first few pictures you're going to see is a Google shot where you can see where the water and the natural water flow is supposed to be flowing, and that's where those drainage ditches were supposed to be placed, so that the water can continue to flow across, the natural flow of the water continues to flow across, and then in the same format that it's supposed to go without it backing up. And then you're going to see where it's starting to erode my property, where we would have to put a driveway up. And if you look down Perryville Road, there are like no land bridge driveways. Okay, this is the only place that has a land bridge driveway that basically is causing all of this water to flow. So then you'll see when the water season comes, some of the last shots where the water comes, it all just big pools of water are right there on the drainage. So I'm not sure who he talked to at State, but I will tell you that I did have a conversation with Mr. Napier because I basically had a gentleman that was cutting our grass that we did not employ to do that. And I'm just going to be honest with you, we don't have a house built on there yet, so of course we don't have homeowners insurance. So anybody that I basically have on that property has to have like insurance, property insurance and everything else so that, you know, we don't have that liability. And so next thing I know, I'm seeing this gentleman named Leon who basically told me that Mr. Napier had told him that he owned that property and that he's supposed to cut the property, and that another gentleman, Stephen, who cuts the back property, actually cuts the property and splits the money with Mr. Napier on our hay. Which we didn't want any money on the hay anyway, but that's not the point. The point is I didn't ensure that these people had insurance for liability and property to be on our property, so I had to buy lines to put up across the property and put no trespassing signs up, which is basically not exactly pretty. Don't prefer to do that, okay? But I had to put lines up so that people would not be on our property, either coming from the church or wherever, because they were led to believe that that property was not owned by us. And then that would be our liability. And Mr. Napier came out and he said he was just trying to be a good neighbor. And I said, no, a good neighbor would have called me first before he came and told people they could be on our property and steal my hay. Okay, that's what a good neighbor would have done. Okay, a good neighbor would have actually probably have not sent me notices saying we want to buy your property after we've declined several times. Okay, that we basically said no, a good neighbor, and then he basically said that I was on the property lines that belonged to him, that he had to take down a barn, that he took down a barn and that was on his property, and I said, well, no, it's not, because those are the posts. So I actually had to pay an appraiser to come out to prove that that was our property line, and I had to put up trespassing signs so that nobody can go on that property without us having, giving permission and proving that they have insurance. So bottom line is, he proposed that he is a good neighbor, but a good neighbor would have basically contacted us first before he had people on our property. And I did tell him then that I said, for one thing, you are not to code. You have changed the land flow, and this was back in August, that he had changed the natural land flow of the water. I said, you're not to code. I said, you have the natural land flow of the water has not been done. You have several things like light poles and everything else that are up there. I assumed that you were not done. You are not to code. I said, now, if I had done this in any one of my properties, there'd be red flags, and you need to fix this and move this out, and I'd be taking care of it. But I gave him an opportunity to fix it on his own, and he chose not to. So that's basically what I have to say, is that now we're hearing all this conditional, if you fix, well, it doesn't make sense to fix property A if we're going to do property B. Well, yeah. And there's no problem with the drainage. As you can see, there is problem with the drainage. It is backing up. The natural flow of the water has been changed, and he has not been fixed. And he has been told he's not the code. So thank you for your time. I so appreciate it. I know, appreciate it. Try not to get passionate. Have a good day.
Okay, anyone else?
We have a gentleman that had a conversation with Mr. Napier about what his intention was in putting the drainage where he did on the east side as opposed to where he was supposed to, if you'd come up and speak. And we would ask that the pictures and all that Ms. Estes
Become a part of the record, okay.
be included in the record.
Yes, sir, state your name
Chuck Robinson.
and raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
You'll have to forgive me. I've about lost my voice.
Me too.
My property is on the back side of the property that the church owns. I'm that last little block right there on that corner. We've lived there about going on 6 years now. I'm from Washington County. I'm a contractor by trade, retired teacher also. And we fell in love with Hughes Lane. When my wife and I drove out the road, we thought, man, this is where we want to live. And we paid maybe a little bit too much money for the property, but we wanted it that bad. And we invested everything we had in the property. I know brother neighbors, we've had many conversations while they were building the church. We would talk. There was times that I would even pray with him. I'm also a pastor. So it kind of puts me between a rock and a hard place. When his wife was sick, I would stop and pray with him. And I thought we had that kind of a relationship, but it went south. There was things that Tim was saying to me that really raised my eyebrows. One of them, as the lawyer was saying, was one afternoon as we were walking down the property line, I asked him who owned the property beside him, and he said, well, he didn't know who owned it, and this is the property that Miss Julie owns. And I said, well, I'd like to find out who owns that property because it's right behind my property, and I'd like to know who my neighbor might be someday. And I asked him, I said, are you, to the effect, are you in, I heard that you bought that. He said, well, we're trying to buy that, but he didn't know who owned it. And he said, and he did make this comment, and I don't want to get in here and this, I say, he said, you said, I really was even questioning myself if I would even get up here and say this or not. Because I know how that can be. He said this, he said that, and it's going to be my word against his word. But after all of my neighbors I've talked with, and all of my neighbors have had different issues with Tim and what's been going on, I feel like you deserve the right to know maybe more from a personal point of view what we're having to deal with. Not only the conditional use permits that he's requiring, but even the person, he said he wanted to be a good neighbor. But I've been accused of moving property lines. My neighbor's been accused of moving his property lines. He's had surveyors out there 5 or 6 different times. And I told him, I said, Tim, you get your surveyor to put a surveyor's pin in my corner. Because when I bought my property, there was a steel stake in the ground. And that my real estate people told me that this is my property line. The landowners for 25 years have put trees out, grapevines, we have spruces, and I was under the impression that's my property. Well, after they had it surveyed, they put a little flag in the ground, just a little white flag. I come home one day from fishing, and I see that flag, I go, ooh, I'm gonna put that in my yard. I jerk it up. Well, the next day, they're out there again. They surveyed it again. I jerked it up. Finally, I found out that Tim was having it surveyed. I said, well, Tim, here's the pin in the ground. This pin's been there for 25 years. I talked to the people that own my, make a long story short, they finally put a surveyor's pin in the ground, and it's never been moved. It's still right there. So, being a neighbor, I'm not gonna challenge it, I'm gonna let it go. Walking down the road one day, I was asking him who that property belonged to. And he didn't know who it belonged to. Found out later, I did some research, found out it was Julie Potts and her husband. And she had been contacted several times from the real estate people from the church to buy the property. So all this started snowballing. It all started making sense to me. And he told me, he said, we're gonna buy that. Here's what he said to me. We're gonna buy that property at a reduced price because they'll never be able to put a driveway on that property. That really hit me hard. And it's been one thing after another. I don't know of a neighbor that adjoins the property that hasn't had these kind of problems. I'm afraid that my property is going to be depreciated, which it will be if this facility goes in. I worry about my wife and my daughter that lives with us. I worry about my investment I've made in Boyle County, and I like Boyle County. Matter of fact, my son-in-law is the assistant superintendent here, and all my grandkids are here. That's why we came to Boyle County. And for a year plus, it has been a nightmare. And we're just tired of living like this. I'm hoping and praying that you will do the right thing. I know you will. And we'll, I guess, move on to the next chapter. I'm sorry I'm so hoarse. But,
It's all right. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Is there anyone else? All right. At this time, I think I would like for Mr. Irwin to make just a brief closing statement, and then we'll have Kevin do the same.
Well,
And
I'd
let-
like to have Mr. Gooch talk about the drainage issue, because he can give some strong evidence regarding that.
Briefly, okay.
My name is Douglas Gooch with AGE Engineering.
Do you swear to affirm the statements you're about to make are true and correct?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, you've heard great detail about the property owners on both sides of the property and the drainage issues they're having. They've got photos and stuff. The unique thing about that is they're polar opposite complaints. The neighbor to the west is complaining that they've increased the rate of water that's entering that property. More water, quicker. The neighbor to the east is complaining that they're detaining the water too long. They're preventing the water from flowing downstream and flooding her property. So it's hard to have both at the same time. So my point here is floodwater is pretty hard item to calculate. It's pretty difficult to put a exact finite number on. I want to explain the design considerations that we took into account when we worked on this property. County government told the church, even before they approached us about working on the site plan, county government told the church that they didn't need to do stormwater detention. They weren't disturbing enough ground to warrant that, and that we convinced the church that there are laws in place that says you cannot damage your neighbor downstream with stormwater. You need to go ahead and do a stormwater facility. Now, this basin that drains through this pond, under the drive, through the pond and through the neighbor's properties, it's approaching 100 acres, farmland, but it's a big basin. This whole basin, we found out after we got into construction, has been subsoiled or tiled just beneath the surface to help dry that property up. Now, all these subsoil pipe end up about where the pond is right now. It was wet. We couldn't get four-wheelers through it when we were topoing the property because it stayed wet all the time. Didn't have surface water, so it wasn't really a wetlands. It wasn't a marsh, but it just was a quagmire. You couldn't get through it. You couldn't mow it. Now, again, this is almost a 100-acre watershed, and they took approximately 2 acres, and it went from 33% runoff to practically 100% runoff, 95%. But you're talking about changing 2% of the property, and you're talking about basically going from 30% runoff to 95% runoff. So the runoff that he changed is practically immeasurable. We would have a more difficult time of saying exactly what water was going to fall in a 100-year storm and a 25-year storm and a 2-year storm than the amount of water he changed. But regardless, we wanted to do some stormwater management. We wanted to alleviate some of the wetness down there so we could mow the thing. So we decided we would do the pond. Now, I'm not sure how and when the decision was made to move the pipe. 2 tests for the pipe. 1, there should never be ponding water after the rain event's over and after the flood is passed. Water should not pond on the upstream neighbor. That's a rule. You cannot pond water on your upstream neighbor. If the water's ponding very deep, it's going to go over the road, and that's probably 3.5, 4 feet. Based on calculations, the stream that was crossing under the fence there was spread out as it comes onto that 50-foot strip, so we don't know exactly where that stream was. It was kind of sheet flow, but it's a significant amount of water. Now, so the first test on the pipe was, is it deep enough so that no water ponds on her property after the storm? Because during the storm, water's going to be crossing the property. That's something that has to be verified and can be verified. The location of the pipe relative to the pond's function, it doesn't matter to the pond's function. The shape of the pond, the depth of the pond, the depth of water from the normal pool to the top of the dam that would be filled during the flood event and then back down after the flood, that's what matters. And we've checked that as a test. The pond is constructed in appropriate shape. It has a freeboard, a storage capacity. Now, the reason we want a concrete weir is, as engineers, we want to be able to mathematically analyze the situation. So we are looking for a known shape, a known flow characteristic, and a opening size so that we can calculate what happens during these different storm events. We have to size the opening so that a 2-year storm still looks like a 2-year storm. A 25-year storm still looks like a 25-year storm. And what that means is, in a 2-year storm in this area, you know, you get 2.5 to 4 inches of rain in an afternoon. That's kind of what happens really with climate change. It's happening once or twice a year, but that's considered a 2-year storm based on Kentucky law. So the 2-year storm fills the pond, say, 8-10 inches higher than normal pool. Well, the weir opening is angled like this. So at 2 inches, you have this much depth flowing out. You get a 100-year storm and the pond gets 1.5 feet deep. The weir is shaped like this, so you have more water at the top, a bigger opening, so you're discharging more water, which more water is coming into the pond during the 100-year storm than the 2. So it's called a tuned opening, and that's why we would like to have the concrete weir, which can be fixed. Keep in mind, he was told by the county he didn't have to do any of that. So can the riprap structure work? It may work. Can it? Its main goal is to keep erosion down so that the dam doesn't erode and the actual storage capacity, you know, be vanished because the water's let out at a much faster rate through a lower opening. So to some degree, the riprap can serve a function, but as far as us being able to mathematically calculate what's being discharged, it's much more difficult with an irregular opening like that. So that's why we would spec a concrete opening. But he did go ahead and spend the money to build a detention basin. The pipe needs to be tested to make sure it's in the low spot, to make sure it's not ponding water on the neighbor. Yes, we raised the road up so we could bury the pipe. You know, if you put a pipe below grade, it just silts full and doesn't function. So the road had to be raised to get appropriate cover over the pipe. The pipe was sized so that we believed we would not dam water up on the neighbor past what was there during the 100-year storms. If it gets very deep, it goes over the road and washes it out. So there's some need for the pipe size there, and we sized that pipe appropriately. But the actual change in the amount of stormwater going downstream is fairly insignificant. We have more difficulty calculating exactly what a 100-year storm is with an accuracy of 6 to 8% maybe, and we've changed the amount of water going into the basin by probably 2%. So it's a minor amount of change, and one of our neighbors is upset because we're retaining water too long, and one is upset because we're discharging too fast, and we're caught in the middle, I guess, as a design firm. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Irwin? Sure. Very briefly surmise, if you would, please.
Thank you. First of all, I don't think the issue of the legal entity is much to worry about, or I don't even know what exactly they would want us to do to fix it. We have a legal entity that owns the land. It's Church of God of America. Its president is sitting here and signed the application. The legal entity that's doing business there is New Birth Temple. Its president is sitting here and is on the application requesting this conditional use permit. Again, we need to go back to what we're here for. We're here for a conditional use permit. They had a right to build a church there. It's zoned for a church. It says right on there, you can build a church here. I don't think a lot of neighbors really wanted a church necessarily in that neighborhood, but that's what they bought when they bought that agricultural land. You can build a church. So then you go and you look, well, what else can you build? You can build a rehabilitation home for the treatment of drug and alcohol. You just got to have some conditions on it. You just can't go out there and build whatever you want and have it look however you want. You must have some conditions on it, and that's your job, is to put the conditions on it. So what conditions would this board put on such a facility? Would you limit it to size? 16 persons. Would you limit it to aesthetic issues? Should it be a brick building? Should it be aesthetically pleasing to the eye? Should you limit it to location? Well, it's directly behind the church, so you really can't see it. Would you limit the number of people who could come and go there? Well, it's a church. You know, some churches have a lot of people come and go on a daily basis, some don't. I said 5 to 10 people will be normally parked there on a daily basis. It could be 20. I mean, you know, I don't know how many people are going to come and go. They have an NA meeting and 10 people show up for the NA meeting to have a Narcotics Anonymous meeting on the property at a church and park in the parking lot and go in there and have that meeting. Is that endangering the safety or welfare of the community? What other conditions would you put on it? Would you want the area fenced so that the lines of demarcation for properties are clearly marked? Okay, we can do that. Would you want some landscaping around it so it looks nice? Okay, we can do that. We've submitted to you the conditions that we have agreed to. Now, the issue that I did hear is about the drainage, and I think Mr. Gooch properly addressed that. Is there a drainage issue? Perhaps. Has there always been a drainage issue? Yes. Is there 100 acres of drainage that goes to that area? Yes. Is part of it, they built a drainage retention pond, and that's all said and done, but that's what was done to address that issue. This entity, this nonprofit entity, is desiring to come into this facility and spend $800,000, not for profit, but to build a drug and rehab facility for Danville and Boyle County. What conditions are we going to place on it? It's going to be an entity. Would you make the entity say, okay, you got to be licensed by the state of Kentucky? All right. We're going to be licensed by the state of Kentucky. Accredited? Yes, accredited. It's going to be an excellent facility and a much needed facility for this community. But the first thing they need to do is approval to build it. And that requires a conditional use permit with whatever conditions you put on it. So I'm asking you to allow this nonprofit entity to go about building a rehabilitation center for drug and alcohol abuse on this 14-plus acres of church property that's located here on Perryville Road. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin? Brief summation, please.
Briefly, the drainage issue goes to good faith, and I think it shows that the applicant has, and Mr. Gooch has his opinion, the neighbors have theirs, but the fact is they had an approved plan for what they should do. They did what they wanted to do, and the neighbors on both sides have drainage issues that they didn't have before. You heard from one of the neighbors as to why what was done on the east side was done. And we'll leave that alone, but what we're about, I still think they have a problem because they have a non-existent entity. They have no long-term commitment from any entity that they have a right to do anything to this property. Even if they did, the burden is on them to show that the use is not detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. We couldn't pin them down. They say 20-plus employees, okay? If you look at their prior applications, they went up to 70-some, 80-some employees is what they said. We're going to do whatever we need to do. We don't have to go get a license till a year after. Well, you saw an application that you have to have, among other things, have the fire marshal look at the plans before you start building. It's not going to be a burden on the infrastructure. They didn't investigate that. I spoke to the city engineer Tuesday. He tells me that is within the area 201C plan, 201 plan. That's the area that the city wants to have sewage, and he didn't have an opinion as to this time whether that should be tapped on or not. But I would submit that that's something. These are all things that they should have taken care of before they came up here to speak to you. We talked about they have to show it doesn't result in increased traffic congestion, population density. You approved an application here. The applicant at the Windjammer was talking about a 14-room hotel. You're talking about a 16-room place. They're going to bring in staff to serve them 24/7. They can walk away whenever they want. They're there because they've got a narcotic or an alcohol problem. And there's nothing to keep them from walking away from there. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to the nearest houses. We've got a problem with the density in that they would maybe have 5, 10 cars a day there on a Sunday. Now you're talking about who knows how many. They may have weekly, daily NA meetings. The burden's on them to show that all of these conditions would be met, and they haven't done it.
Thank you. Steve, do you have anything to add? Or that you want to add?
Just that I hear all the time, we need a Chick-fil-A. Just going through my mind.
Thank you, Steve.
Madam Chairman, I would like to address the bill before it
Okay.
votes. There are two essential findings that have to be made in order to approve this conditional use permit, and the burden is on the applicant to tender that evidence to make that case. The first condition is that the applicant has to prove that, to your satisfaction, that this particular use in the area where it's to be located is essential to or would promote the public health, safety, and welfare. I didn't hear that from the applicant's counsel. Mr. Nesbitt stated it a little differently, but I think, in other words, he stated it's not going to be detrimental. Well, I think there's a higher standard that the applicant has to meet. It has to be essential to or promote the public health, safety, and welfare in the area where it's located. Additionally, it's assumed by the state statute that conditional uses will somewhat impact an area, adversely impact an area. So the second prong of the applicant's burden is that they have to suggest conditions which will prevent the conditional use from impairing the integrity and character of the area. Under that second test, you could find that there really aren't any conditions that could be imposed that will prevent the facility from having an adverse impact on the integrity and character of the area. You could find that you haven't been presented with sufficient information on which to impose conditions. So I want, the other point I want to make is that you cannot use the failure of the applicant's non-compliance with its first project as a reason as a sole reason to turn this down, or as a primary reason to turn this down. You have to consider this application on its merits. But keep in mind that the two bases for your decision, have they proved that this facility was essential to or promote the public health, safety, and welfare on Berryville Road? And are there conditions that can be imposed which would prevent the location of that facility from impairing the integrity and character of the area? Or have you been given sufficient information to even decide what those conditions might be?
At this time, do I hear a motion?
I have a thought that Mr. Napier wants to have this facility, the neighbors want drainage, and they want a good neighbor. I'm going to propose that, and this is a bit of a brainstorm, but maybe it'll fly or maybe it won't. Maybe we have a very high standard for acceptance, that Mr. Napier can have the acceptance of the variation if he meets these 6 standards of the planning and zoning, and if he first satisfies the neighbors that he has fixed the other problems.
I don't think
So
we can do that.
that they could.
I don't think we can do that
No, we
because.
can't?
Let Mr. Anderson continue till he's
Okay.
done.
So that if Mr. Napier went and fixed, because what I heard mostly from the neighbors was, he's not the neighbor I wanted as far as being a good neighbor, and that is materialized in this drainage problem. If they were actually pleased, so Mrs. Estes came back and said, he has repaired the ill will, he has fixed these terrible problems, which I see as substantial. And the other contiguous neighbors said, yes, we are satisfied, actually. He has flipped us on this because he has truly proven that he can be a good neighbor. He has done what we want, and now he can do what he wants. It's a very high standard. I don't know if there's any precedent. I don't know if it's allowed, but it's a brainstorm.
Well, I appreciate you trying to think outside the box, but the state statute and our ordinance limits pretty severely what this board can do in these circumstances. The theory of planning and zoning is conformity, and so the Board of Adjustment is sort of a safety valve, but they really, the limitations imposed on you by statute are pretty strong. And I have to go back to, do you believe that the applicant has showed that what they're proposing to do on this property is essential to or would promote the public health, safety, and welfare? And do you believe that there are conditions, or this board has sufficient information to impose conditions which would prevent it from impairing the integrity and character of the neighborhood? I think what I hear what you proposed was, I don't want to oversimplify it, but basically was give him a chance to see if he can satisfy his neighbors, and if they're happy, we'll go forward. And unfortunately, the state law just doesn't give you that latitude.
Could that happen in effect if we denied it? He could come back, if we denied it and then he fixed the things and made the neighbors happy, then he could come back a year from now and apply again, right?
He can come back next month, as a matter of fact. But yes, he can come back. There used to be some law that you couldn't continue to, make applications for the same conditional use time after time, but that's pretty much been eradicated at this point, so he could be back here next month.
David, were you making a motion to approve?
I don't think my motion is allowed, so
Okay.
I'm going to withdraw that.
Okay. Do I hear another motion?
I have a question.
Okay.
To Mr. Smith, you suggested, are there conditions that we could impose that would be satisfactory? Mr. Irwin suggested just a moment ago that one condition we might impose was to require licensing. How can we do that for a facility that hasn't been constructed? Is it possible to require licensing before change is made?
Wouldn't the state require that?
I'm going to let Mr. Irwin address that. As I understood what he related is that you've got to be in operation. No, okay.
That was
Go
for
ahead.
accreditation, am I right? You would get a license, but you could not be accredited until you had been in operation for a year. You would have to follow all the state licensing procedures. You wouldn't have a choice. Yeah, you'd have to follow the state procedures
So
for
your
that.
suggestion does not fly? Because we cannot require licensing before,
Well, the state requires it.
Right, the state's gonna require licensure. The state will require you to be licensed to operate.
yes, but my question was, can we require licensing before, as a condition to approval of the variation?
Go ahead, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, made light here just a second ago. I know we all want to get out of here, but I guess I get to be the planner for a minute. All these lawyers were talking, but yeah, we can do that. I've been involved in hundreds of conditional use permit applications, and you know the standards, but I've seen all kinds of conditions imposed, worded, wordsmiths. We could easily have a condition that says prior to occupancy of the building, the applicant shall furnish all license, permit, whatever, to the planning commission in writing before. We could tie it into occupancy issues. We could do, but I get it. When you're zoning property or getting conditional use, it's all conceptual. So to have hard engineering at this phase, have all the application and licensing answers, no, that's not going to happen. But surely we could craft a condition if that was your desire to address all the issues, but maybe we can't. But to that specific one, it'd be easy to say, yeah, condition of approval would be the applicant's going to A, B, C, D prior to something. Now, is it likely that's going to happen? Is that hard on us to kind of deal with that after the fact, as opposed to just a condition on square footage or how big the sign will be? Sure, that is. But I think if that's what you all desired, but I guess where we're at today is what our attorney just said. We're trying to, I guess, address compatibility in an agricultural zone. I'll stand here in front of you guys and tell you this ordinance that we're looking at, man, it's hard for me to believe we even want to have those things in an agricultural district. There was some talk earlier about a conditional use permit that ended up in court that I was part of. Well, it was right there under that number 3, under the ag, in the jurisdiction I came from. We allowed veterinary clinics, not by right, but conditional use in Warren County. And that got an approval and went awry. We went into code enforcement and ended up in court under this willful issue. But at some point, where I came from, we didn't even allow half of that stuff in the ag district. So the basis that I'm struggling with here is, what is our ag district? What is its goal? To live, to farm, and I guess to do some other things, including veterinary clinics and small animal hospitals and churches and schools with no scope, scale, size, lighting. I think when this ordinance was written, clearly we thought those things were those were compatible with the ag district. You could argue that a church isn't compatible with the ag district at this scale, size, lighting, that much parking. The fact that you got to build a basin of that magnitude. So the ordinance needs some housekeeping, but clearly you can do a CUP for this kind of use. If we ever get into the future and amend the ordinance, I would think we'd want to strike a lot of those things out of the ag district, because the scale is what we're trying to get to here, and I haven't heard anything yet that really locks all that down in hard conditions, other than we got a concept plan that maybe is the right one, not the right one. But, you know, I think we need some conditions that I hope we can police down the road if that's where you are going. And right now, I haven't heard anything other than we'll do what's on the plan, and those other 6 items are concerns, but we haven't agreed to them formally, especially on the sewer. And then all these other scale issues really haven't been addressed either. And like our attorney, I'd hate to kick this down the road, but it just feels like we're premature right now in the conceptual planning of this.
Okay.
And it lacks some conditions to give us guidance as a staff on how we're going to move forward to the site plan and ultimately the zoning permit phase.
Is there a motion at this time? Anybody? Mike? Linda?
I feel like that I don't have enough knowledge about this, I suppose, and to see that this is an essential need. I mean, we started off with, my information calls for 9,000 square feet, we're talking 3,100 square feet. We're talking ownership, that everyone was privy to know that it wasn't straightened out, it isn't straightened out now. There's application forms that weren't properly prepared and brought forward.
Are you making a motion?
Oh, well.
This is the preamble to the motion.
Yeah,
The motion, I
okay.
suppose. I just feel like that I would have to say no, because I don't understand the true, nature that's, I mean, we have too many variables that keep being kicked around, that I just don't understand.
So is that a motion?
That's the motion, yes.
To deny? Bruce, do you want to?
No, go ahead, finish.
Go ahead. You want to include these findings of fact, that it's,
Yeah, help me out here.
Well, I'd like to go back to what I stated before we started discussing this. I mean, I think one of your reasons has to address, has the applicant proved that what they're planning to do here is essential or would promote the public health, safety, and welfare in this particular area? If the answer to that is no, then it's really, you could go on and address whether or not you thought you had enough information for conditions, or whether or not you thought any conditions could be imposed that would prevent it from impairing the integrity and character of the area. But the threshold is, do you believe what's being proposed is essential to or would promote the public health, safety, and welfare in this area?
I don't think there's been any proof that's concrete that they have.
Okay. And what about the conditions? Do you think there are any conditions that could be imposed which would prevent it from impairing the integrity and character of the area? Or do you believe that you haven't had sufficient information to even make that decision?
I don't think I've had sufficient information.
Okay. Those
Do I
would
hear
be
a
the
second?
findings.
Speaking for myself, I can imagine that there are conditions that could be imposed.
Well, we need a second before we discuss it, though. Okay, all right, go ahead, Preston.
I can imagine conditions that would be satisfactory. Those would be all 6 items spelled out on page 4, and all 6 items spelled out on page 5, and documentation that licensing, and a 7th one, documentation that licensing has been approved at the state level, all of those before construction began.
I would
So
want to
that
see
would
a
be-
sewer. I would want to see a sewer. I don't want septic tank
So that's
out
a 14th
That's one
condition.
of, it's kind of one of the 6, right?
But yeah,
Isn't
but
that
it's
number
not,
2?
it's not, it would just need to have a sewer, I think, for that many people. But the motion right now is to not approve, so that's what we have to vote on at this point. So I have a second, have a motion and a second. All those who wish to deny the permit, say aye, or raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion is denied. It was Jesse, Linda, me, Donna, and Mike. I might actually make my down. 15 minutes. Oh, I need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
I have a doctor's appointment.
That's what I was trying to do, yeah.
Second?
Amen.
All in favor?
Amen.
Let's go.